The sound of rain, a gentle, persistent rhythm on the window pane. In the darkness, a body lies still, but the mind will not rest. It is a mind caught in a relentless current, pulled backwards into the echoes of yesterday's conversations and regrets, then flung forward into the anxieties of a tomorrow that has not yet arrived. The worries layer upon each other, fine as mist, but heavy as a shroud. Each drop of rain outside seems to mirror a drop of concern inside, a ceaseless tapping that promises no end and no sleep. This scene is not just a moment of sleeplessness. It is an emblem of our modern condition. Our minds have become like a city that never goes dark, perpetually illuminated by the glow of screens, endlessly humming with the noise of notifications, deadlines, and the quiet, desperate pressure to be more, to do more, to have more. We are constantly drenched in a storm of information, a deluge of expectations from our work, our society, and even ourselves. This constant downpour leads to a subtle but pervasive state of exhaustion, a spiritual dampness that leaves us feeling anxious, disconnected, and fundamentally restless, even when our bodies are crying out for peace. But what if the rain was not the enemy? What if the sound that mirrors our anxiety could also become the key to our tranquility? What if there was a path, not to stop the storm of life, but to find a deep and unshakable shelter within ourselves? There is such a path, a way of transforming our relationship with our own minds. It does not demand that we change the world outside, but it offers the tools to calm the world within. This is the timeless wisdom of the Buddhist tradition, offered here not as a system of belief to be adopted, but as a practical science of the mind, a collection of insights and practices tested for thousands of years, capable of guiding us, step by step, from the heart of the storm to the profound quiet that lies at the center of our own being. Our journey begins not with a grand gesture, not with a demanding pilgrimage, but with a quiet, radical act of acknowledgement. It begins with the courage to simply be with what is, to feel the first cool drop of a fundamental truth as it lands upon our skin. In the ancient language of the Buddha, this truth is called dukkha. This word is often translated into English simply as suffering, but this translation, while not entirely wrong, is incomplete. It can conjure images of great tragedy, of immense pain and despair, things we might feel are separate from our ordinary, day-to-day lives. But the reality of dukkha is both more subtle and more pervasive than that. It is the inner rain. It is the background hum of dissatisfaction, the quiet friction of a life that never feels quite right. It is the tension in your shoulders as you read an email from your boss. It is the fleeting shadow of disappointment when a beautiful sunset ends. It is the low-grade, persistent anxiety that whispers to you in quiet moments, the feeling of being a stranger in your own life, running on a treadmill of tasks and obligations, forever chasing a horizon of contentment that seems to recede with every step you take. Dukkha is the gap between the world as we want it to be and the world as it actually is. It is the ache of wanting things to be permanent in a world that is defined by change. We want our youth to last, our relationships to be stable, our moments of joy to be frozen in time. But the river of life flows on, indifferent to our desires. This resistance, this subtle clenching against the natural flow of reality, is the essence of dukkha. In our modern world, this experience is amplified 1,000 times over. We scroll through the curated lives of others, a highlight reel of perfect holidays, successful careers, and beautiful families, and the quiet feeling of inadequacy gnaws at us. We are told that happiness is just one more purchase away, one more promotion, one more achievement. And so we strive, we push, we accumulate, only to find that the new car becomes just a car, the new job becomes just a job, and the profound sense of unease remains, a faithful companion that no amount of external success can seem to banish. This is dukkha. It is not a sign that your life is broken or that you have failed. It is a fundamental characteristic of the human condition, a truth as universal as the weather itself. To truly understand this, it is vital to see the distinction between pain and suffering. Pain is an unavoidable part of life. Our bodies age, we get sick, we experience loss. People we love will leave us. These are, in the language of this path, the first arrows. They are the raw, unmediated events of reality that strike us. They hurt. There is no spiritual path that promises a life free from these first arrows. But our suffering, the dukkha we experience, is very often the second arrow. This is the arrow we shoot at ourselves. The first arrow is the headache. The second arrow is the story we tell ourselves about it. Why do I always get these? I won't be able to get any work done. This whole day is ruined. The first arrow is a critical comment from a colleague. The second arrow is the endless loop of replaying that comment in our minds. The shame, the anger, the self-doubt that follows. The pain of the first arrow is real, but it is often brief. The suffering of the second arrow, the mental proliferation, the storytelling, the resistance, can go on for days, weeks, even years. We take a simple, clean event of pain and we spin it into a thick, tangled web of suffering. The path of wisdom begins with this recognition. Much of our distress is not inflicted upon us by the world, but by our own minds in reaction to the world. To turn and face this truth, to acknowledge the ever-present reign of dukkha, is not an act of pessimism. It is an act of supreme courage and profound self-compassion. It is like being in a dark, cluttered room for a very long time, constantly tripping over things you cannot see. Acknowledging dukkha is the act of reaching for the light switch. When the light first comes on, it might feel jarring. We might see, for the first time, the full extent of the clutter and disarray in our own minds. It can be tempting to quickly turn the light off again, to retreat into the familiar twilight of distraction and denial. But the path of awakening asks us to be brave, to let our eyes adjust, and to look with gentle, non-judgmental curiosity at what is actually here. Because only when the light is on can we begin to gently, patiently put the room in order. This first truth is not a diagnosis of a terminal illness. It is the beginning of the cure. It is the end of pretending, the end of the exhausting effort to convince ourselves and others that everything is perfect when, deep down, we feel the subtle ache of things being not quite right. There is a powerful story that illustrates this first step. A young woman named Kisa Gotami lived a happy life, devoted to her husband and her infant son. One day, tragedy struck, and her son died suddenly, consumed by a grief so vast she could not accept reality. She took the small, lifeless body in her arms and went from house to house, desperately seeking medicine that could revive him. Some people turned her away, others pitied her. Some thought she had lost her mind, but one wise man, seeing the depth of her pain, directed her to the only one who could truly help. He told her to go to the Buddha. Kisa Gotami ran to the Buddha, laid her son at his feet, and explained her quest for medicine. The Buddha listened with immense compassion. He looked at her and said, "There is only one thing you need for the medicine. Go into the village and bring me back a single mustard seed." but it must be from a house where no one has ever lost a child, a spouse, a parent, or a friend. Hopeful, Kisa Gotami went to the first house. "The Buddha needs a mustard seed for medicine," she said. "Can you give me one?" "Of course," the woman of the house replied. But when Kisa Gotami added the condition, "It must be from a house untouched by death," the woman's face fell. "Oh, my dear," she said, "the living are few, but the dead are many. We lost my father just last year." She went to the next house, and the next, and the next. Everywhere she was met with the same story. "I lost my husband. I lost my sister. We lost our youngest child." House by house, door by door. Her frantic, personal quest for a magical cure began to transform. She was still grieving, but her grief was no longer an isolated island of pain. She began to see that the sorrow she carried in her arms was a sorrow that lived behind every door, in every heart. The first arrow of her loss was uniquely hers, but the experience of loss itself was the shared inheritance of all humanity. Sitting by the roadside as evening fell, watching the lights of the village flicker on and then off, she understood. "How selfish I have been in my grief," she thought. "Death is common to all." In that moment of profound acceptance, her frantic struggle ceased. She had found the mustard seed of wisdom, not in a house without death, but in the truth that death touches every house. This is the first truth. It is the realization that the reign of dukkha, the reign of impermanence, loss, and dissatisfaction, falls on everyone. By acknowledging it in our own lives, we are not isolating ourselves in misery. We are, in fact, taking the first step toward a genuine connection with all of life, a connection based not on a shared pretense of happiness, but on a shared, fundamental reality. We have now felt the rain. We have given it a name. We have seen, through the story of Kisa Gotami, that we are not alone in the downpour. And so, a new question can begin to form. A question born not of panicked resistance, but of calm and genuine curiosity. If this rain is a constant feature of our world, where does it come from? What are the conditions that gather the clouds? To understand this is to move from simply standing in the rain to beginning to understand the weather itself. Having stood in the gentle rain of our own restlessness and recognized it as a shared human truth, our inquiry naturally turns upward toward the sky. We ask not with panic, but with a clear-eyed curiosity. Where does this weather come from? What feeds these clouds that gather and release the persistent drizzle of dukkha? The second great truth offered by the Buddha answers this question directly. It is called samudaya, which means the origin or the source. It states that the source of our deep-seated dissatisfaction is a profound and relentless thirst. The ancient word for this is tanha. While it can be translated as desire or craving, the word thirst perhaps best captures its visceral, urgent, and deeply compelling nature. It is this inner thirst, this constant reaching for something outside of ourselves to make us feel whole. That is the engine of the storm. It is the energy that fuels the entire cycle of anxiety and stress. This is not a simple, single thirst, but a complex inner force that manifests in three distinct ways. The first, and most familiar, is the thirst for sense pleasures, kama tanha. This is the thirst for things that delight our eyes, our ears, our tongue, our body, and our mind. It is the magnetic pull toward a delicious meal, the latest piece of technology, the perfect song, the approval of our peers, or the thrill of a new experience. Our modern world is an engine built to generate this specific thirst. Every advertisement, every curated social media feed, every billboard, is a whisper, a promise that happiness, satisfaction, and completeness can be found in something external. It tells us that if we just buy this, wear this, drive this, or go here, the inner ache will finally cease. And so we drink, we consume, we experience, we acquire. And for a moment, it works. There is a brief flash of pleasure, a temporary quenching of the thirst. But soon, the pleasure fades, as all sensations do. The new phone becomes familiar. The delicious meal ends. The praise from others is forgotten. And we find ourselves thirsty once again, looking for the next source of satisfaction. We are caught in a loop, chasing fleeting pleasures that can never provide lasting contentment, like trying to fill a leaking cup. The second form of this thirst is more subtle and perhaps even more powerful. It is the thirst for existence or for becoming, known as bhava tanha. This is not just the desire to continue living, but the deep craving to be a solid, permanent, successful someone. It is the thirst for a stable identity, a secure story about who we are. We want to be the successful professional, the good parent, the respected community member, the spiritually advanced person. We cling to these identities, these labels, because they give us a sense of ground in a groundless world. This thirst fuels our ambition, our relentless planning for the future, and our deep-seated fear of failure, change, and death. It is the source of the anxiety that whispers, "What if I lose my job? What if this relationship ends? What if I get old?" It is the clinging to the I that we have constructed, the desperate attempt to hold a statue steady in the middle of a flowing river. We believe that if we can just solidify our position, our reputation, our story, then we will be safe. Then we will be happy. But life is a process of constant becoming and unbecoming, and our attempt to fix it in place is a struggle against the very nature of reality, a struggle that can only ever produce tension and fear. The third form of thirst is the opposite, yet intimately related. It is the thirst for non-existence, vibhava tanha. This is the urge to get rid of what is unpleasant. It is the powerful desire for painful feelings, difficult situations, and uncomfortable truths to simply go away. On its most extreme level, this can manifest as suicidal ideation, the desire to annihilate the self and its pain entirely. But in our daily lives, it appears constantly in more subtle forms. It is the urge to reach for our phone the moment we feel a pang of boredom. It is the desire to pour a drink after a hard day to numb the stress. It is the impulse to start an argument, to avoid a difficult conversation about our own vulnerability. It is every act of distraction, numbing, and pushing away. We declare war on our own unwanted experiences. We want to annihilate our anxiety, destroy our sadness, and obliterate our anger. But in doing so, we only give these experiences more power. By fighting them, we get entangled with them. This thirst to escape from the present moment because it is uncomfortable is a powerful engine of addictive behavior and a constant source of inner conflict. We are at war with our own lives, and this internal battle is utterly exhausting. A powerful parable illustrates the nature of this thirst. Imagine a man adrift on a life raft in the middle of the vast ocean. He has been without water for days, and his throat is a desert. He is tormented by a desperate, all-consuming thirst. He is surrounded by water, endless and shimmering as far as he can see. In a moment of madness, overcome by his craving, he decides to drink. He cups his hands, scoops up the clear, cool salt water, and brings it to his lips. For a fleeting instant, the coolness on his tongue feels like salvation. It feels like he is solving the problem. But soon after, the salt begins its work. drawing even more moisture from his body. His thirst, instead of being quenched, returns with a vengeance, more powerful and more agonizing than before. Delirious, he drinks again and again, each drink promising relief, but only delivering a deeper poisoning, a more intense craving, pulling him faster toward his demise. This is the perfect metaphor for seeking lasting happiness through tanha. Each satisfaction of a craving is like a drink of salt water. It seems to solve the problem temporarily, but it ultimately intensifies the underlying condition of thirst, leaving us more desperate, more dissatisfied, and more deeply caught in the cycle of suffering. It is so important to understand that this teaching is not a condemnation of desire itself. The path is not about becoming a passionless stone, devoid of joy or preference. It is natural to enjoy a warm day, a kind word, or a beautiful piece of art. The problem is not the enjoying, it is the clinging. It is the transformation of a simple preference into a desperate, clenched fist demand. It's the voice that says, "I must have this to be happy," or "This moment is perfect, it must not end," or "This feeling is unbearable, I must get rid of it right now." This clenching, this demanding, this desperate grasping and pushing away is the essence of tanha. The enjoyment of life is not the cause of suffering. The thirst that turns enjoyment into an addiction and discomfort into a personal war, that is the source of the storm. And so, the second great truth does not deliver a message of blame, but one of phenomenal empowerment. It places the key to our own freedom directly into our hands. The storm of our anxiety, the clouds of our stress, the ceaseless rain of our dissatisfaction are not random cosmic events inflicted upon us. They are a weather pattern generated by the energy of our own inner thirst, our own clinging. If we are the ones feeding the storm, it means we are also the ones who can learn to stop feeding it. This recognition is not a cause for guilt, but a beacon of hope. It means our situation is not hopeless. It means our inner peace is not dependent on changing the world, winning the lottery, or getting everyone to like us. The source of the problem lies within our own mind, and therefore, so does the solution. This realization leads us to the next, most hopeful question of all. If we can see the source of the storm, does this mean the storm can pass? Is it truly possible for the clouds of craving to part and to experience the clear, open, peaceful sky of a mind that is finally free? We have looked unflinchingly at the nature of our inner rain, the pervasive dissatisfaction called dukkha. We have peered into the heart of the storm and identified its source, the relentless driving energy of our own thirst, our tanha. To stop here would be to leave us with a diagnosis without a cure, a map of the prison without a key to the door. But the journey does not end in this bleak landscape. The entire purpose of identifying the cause of the storm is to know that the storm is not our permanent reality. It is to lead us to the third great truth, a truth that shines like the sun breaking through the darkest clouds. This is the truth of Nirodha, which translates as cessation or the end. It is the astonishing, life-altering promise that the rain can stop. It is the declaration that an end to our self-inflicted suffering is not just a fantasy, but a tangible, achievable possibility. It is the truth that there exists a sky, vast, clear, and serene, that is always present behind the temporary weather of our minds. This state of ultimate peace and freedom is known by the famous term nirvana. And just like the word dukkha, nirvana is often profoundly misunderstood in the West. It is not a heavenly realm you go to after you die, a reward for a virtuous life. It is not a place of eternal bliss with pearly gates and angels. The Buddha was not a mystic promising a paradise in the afterlife. He was a psychologist of the highest order, describing a state of mind that could be realized in this very life, here and now. The literal meaning of the word nirvana is to blow out or to extinguish. This sounds negative, perhaps even frightening, until we ask, what is it that is being blown out? What is being extinguished? The answer is simple and direct. What is extinguished are the three fires that fuel all of our suffering. The fire of greed, that insatiable thirst for more. The fire of hatred, the aversion and anger we feel toward what is unpleasant. And the fire of delusion, the fundamental ignorance of the way things truly are. Imagine your mind is a room lit by three flickering, smoking torches. The torch of greed makes you constantly run around the room, trying to grasp everything you see, never satisfied. The torch of hatred makes you shrink into a corner, filled with fear and anger at the shadows on the wall. And the torch of delusion fills the room with a thick, disorienting smoke, so you can't see things clearly and are constantly bumping into the furniture. Nirvana is the state of gently, carefully blowing out these three torches. When the fires are gone, what is left? Not a cold, dark emptiness. What is left is the room itself, just as it is, finally seen in the clear, natural light pouring through the window. What is left is peace, clarity, and an immense, unshakable freedom. It is the mind returned to its natural state, luminous, calm, and undisturbed. This peace is not a fragile thing. It is not the absence of noise, but the ability to be at peace within the noise. A person who has touched this state still experiences the world. The wind still blows, the rain still falls, life still presents its challenges. The first arrows of life still arrive, but they are no longer met with the second arrows of reactivity, judgment, and fear. There is a deep, internal quiet, an unshakable balance that allows one to meet both pleasure and pain with a spacious, open, and compassionate heart. This points to a fundamental difference between the happiness we usually seek and the peace that Nirodha describes. Most of our lives are spent in pursuit of conditional happiness. This is a happiness that depends on things going our way. We are happy if we get the promotion, if our partner says the right thing, if our body is healthy, if the sun is shining. It is a happiness built on a foundation of external conditions. And because conditions are, by their very nature, constantly changing, this happiness is inherently fragile and fleeting. It requires constant effort, constant management of the world around us. It is the exhausting project of trying to nail the weather vane so that it always points south. The peace of nirvana, however, is an unconditional well-being. It is a profound contentment that arises from within, independent of external circumstances. It is a deep warmth that does not depend on an outer fire. It is the discovery that we don't need the weather vane to point south, because we have found a compass within our own heart that is always oriented toward peace. The frantic, lifelong search for happiness outside ourselves finally comes to an end, not because we have found everything we were looking for, but because we have realized that the peace we were seeking was our own true nature all along. There is a beautiful parable that illustrates this. Imagine a lake high in the mountains. For years, the winds of desire have swept across its surface. The currents of aversion have churned its depths, and the runoff of confusion has poured into it, making the water thick and brown with mud and sediment. As long as the lake is agitated, the water will never be clear. You cannot see the smooth stones on its floor, nor the vast blue sky above. Now, how do you make the water clear? You could try to filter it. A laborious, and endless task. You could pour in chemicals, trying to force the sediment to settle. But these are acts of striving, of doing, and they only stir the water more. The true path to clarity is far simpler. It is a path of non-doing. You simply stop the agitation. You build a shelter to protect the lake from the wind. You stop pouring in more mud. You simply allow the lake to be still. And then, a miracle happens. A miracle of nature, without any further effort. The mud, the silt, the sediment, by its own weight, begins to settle. Slowly, gracefully, it sinks to the bottom, and the water begins to clear. Soon, it becomes so transparent that you can see every pebble on the floor, and its surface becomes a perfect, flawless mirror, reflecting the moon, the stars, and the infinite sky without a single distortion. Our mind is that lake. Our ceaseless thinking, craving, and resisting is the wind that stirs the mud. The practice is not to force the mind to be clear, but to simply create the conditions for stillness, and to allow the mud of our confusion to settle naturally. Peace is not something we must create. It is the natural state of the undisturbed mind. This, then, is the breathtaking promise of the third noble truth. The clear sky of nirvana is not a distant myth. It is our own deepest nature, waiting to be revealed. The cessation of our self-created suffering is not a vain hope, but the logical result of understanding the cause and removing it. We are not fundamentally broken, anxious, or incomplete beings. We are the clear lake, and we have simply forgotten our own clarity. We are the blue sky, and we have mistaken the passing clouds for our true identity. To know this, to truly take in this possibility, changes everything. It shifts the entire ground of our being from one of desperate seeking to one of quiet uncovering. The ultimate question of our life is no longer, how can I find happiness out there? But how can I stop doing the things that obscure the peace that is already here? This leads us, with a heart full of hope and sincere purpose, to the final, practical question. If a cure exists, what is the prescription? If a path to the end of the storm exists, where does it begin, and what are its steps? How, precisely, does one walk this path from the tangled shore of suffering to the clear, quiet water of liberation? We have stood on the shore of a great and hopeful promise. We have seen that the sky of our mind can be cleared, that the ceaseless, agitating rain of our own making can come to an end. We have glimpsed the possibility of a profound and unshakable peace called Nirodha. But a destination, no matter how beautiful, is useless without a path to get there. A promise of a cure is torment without a prescription. And so, we arrive at the fourth and final great truth, the one that turns this profound philosophy into a practical, livable reality. This is the truth of Magga, the path itself. If the first three truths are the diagnosis, the cause, and the prognosis, this fourth truth is the treatment plan. It is the detailed, step-by-step guide that leads from the tangled woods of our confusion to the open clearing of liberation. This guide is known as the Noble Eightfold Path. Before we walk this path, we must first understand the spirit in which it is to be traveled. This is not a path of harsh extremes. It is not a set of rigid, unforgiving commandments that demand perfection. It is, in its very essence, the middle way. The Buddha discovered this principle through his own experience. After leaving his palace, he first practiced extreme asceticism, starving his body and pushing it to the brink of death, believing that by punishing the body he could liberate the spirit. But he found that this only led to weakness and a clouded mind, not to wisdom. He had already known the other extreme in his palace, a life of indulgent sensual pleasure, and he knew that this too only led to a deeper, more subtle form of suffering. The path to awakening, he realized, lay in the balance between these two ends. It is a path of wisdom, not of punishment. There is a story of a monk named Sona, who was practicing with such fierce, unrelenting effort that he was making no progress. He was constantly tired, his mind was agitated, and the soles of his feet were cracked and bleeding from endless walking meditation. Discouraged, he thought of giving up. The Buddha, knowing his thoughts, went to him. He knew that in his lay life, Sona had been a gifted musician, a master of the lute. So the Buddha asked him, "Sona, tell me, when the strings of your lute were too tight, could you play beautiful music?" Sona replied, "No, Lord. When the strings were too tight, they would snap, and when the strings were too loose," the Buddha continued, "could you play beautiful music then?" "No, Lord," Sona said. "When the strings were too loose, they made no sound at all." The Buddha then looked at him and said, "In the same way, Sona, energy that is stretched too tight leads to restlessness, and energy that is too slack leads to laziness. The path is found when your energy is balanced, like the well-tuned strings of your lute. This is the spirit of the Eightfold Path. It is a skillful tuning of our own lives, finding the beautiful, resonant harmony between effort and ease, between discipline and self-compassion. The path itself consists of 8 interconnected factors, which are traditionally organized into 3 essential trainings. This structure helps us to see it not as a confusing list, but as a holistic program for human flourishing. The first training is ethical conduct, or sila. This forms the foundation of the path and includes 3 factors: right speech, right action, and right livelihood. This is how we engage with the world. It is about learning to speak, act, and work in ways that are harmless, helpful, and supportive of our own and others' well-being. By establishing a baseline of ethical behavior, we calm the most flagrant disturbances in our lives, creating a stable and peaceful outer environment that allows for the much deeper inner work to take place. The second training is mental discipline, or samadhi. This is the heart of the meditative practice and includes right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. This is the direct training of the mind itself. It is where we learn how to gently steer our attention, to let go of unskillful mental states, and to cultivate beneficial ones. It is the process of taming the so-called monkey mind, the restless, chaotic stream of thought that so often governs our lives. Through this training, the mind becomes calm, focused, and powerful, like a focused beam of light instead of a scattered flicker. The third training is wisdom, or panya. This is the guiding intelligence of the entire path, and it includes the first 2 factors: right view and right intention. Wisdom is both the beginning and the culmination of the journey. It is what allows us to see clearly and to motivate ourselves skillfully. It provides the context and the direction for all our efforts in the realms of conduct and concentration. It is the compass that ensures we are walking in the right direction. It is crucial to understand that these 8 factors are not sequential steps on a ladder. You do not perfect right speech, then move on to right action, and so on. They are more like the individual strands of a single, powerful rope. Each strand supports and is supported by all the others. When you practice mindfulness, it becomes easier to notice the impulse to speak harshly, thus strengthening your right speech. When you practice right livelihood, earning a living in a way that feels wholesome, your mind is more at ease and better able to concentrate. When your wisdom deepens, your compassion grows, which naturally informs all your actions and words. It is a system of mutual reinforcement, a gradual, integrated process of growth, much like learning to ride a bicycle, where you must learn to balance, pedal, and steer all at the same time. At first it feels clumsy and impossible, but with practice, it all comes together in a single, fluid motion. Let us look for a moment at the two factors of the wisdom training, for they are what orient the entire journey. The very first factor is right view. This is the compass. It is having the right map of the territory before you begin to walk. Right view, in its simplest sense, is the clear understanding of the Four Noble Truths themselves. It is seeing for oneself that there is this pervasive unease called dukkha, that it is caused by our own thirst, that an end to this unease is possible, and that the Eightfold Path is the way to that end. Without this view, our efforts can be misguided. We might practice meditation to become more successful in our career, or to gain psychic powers, but this would not be the path to liberation. Right view ensures that our efforts are aimed at the highest possible goal, the complete and final end of suffering. The second factor of wisdom is right intention. If right view is the compass, right intention is the hand on the ship's rudder, steering us in every moment. It is the conscious and deliberate cultivation of the thoughts that will guide us toward freedom. The tradition speaks of three specific right intentions. The first is the intention of renunciation, which means the intention to let go of clinging, to release our tight grip on desires and outcomes. The second is the intention of loving kindness, the genuine wish for the well-being and happiness of all beings, without exception, starting with ourselves. The third is the intention of compassion, the sincere wish that all beings, including ourselves, be free from suffering. These intentions are what purify our motivation. They ensure that we are walking the path not out of selfish ambition or fear, but out of a deep and abiding love for ourselves and for the world. So now the map is unfolded before us. We see its three great territories: the wholesome way we live in the world, the direct training of our own mind, and the clear wisdom that guides it all. We understand its fundamental principle, the balanced, sustainable middle way. We have been given our compass in right view, and we know how to steer with right intention. The path from the turbulent shores of anxiety to the quiet harbor of peace is no longer a mystery. It is a living, breathing practice, available to us in every moment. The grand journey has been charted, and it begins, as all profound journeys do, with the simple act of paying attention. It begins with learning how to watch, how to observe the inner landscape with a new kind of clarity. Of all the territories on the map of the Eightfold Path, there is one that serves as the gateway to all others. It is a quality of mind, a specific skill that illuminates every other step of the journey. This is the practice of right mindfulness, or sati. It is the foundational training for the mind, the first lesson in learning to calm the storm, not by fighting it, but by changing our relationship to it entirely. The practice of mindfulness is the art of becoming the watcher at the window. For most of our lives, we are lost outside in the weather of our own experience. We are caught in the driving rain of our anxiety, tossed about by the winds of our anger, and blinded by the fog of our confusion. We are not just in the storm, we believe we are the storm. Mindfulness is the radical act of stepping inside. It is the moment we find our way to a quiet room, walk to the window, and with a gentle hand, wipe the condensation from the glass. From this place of sheltered observation, the storm does not necessarily stop, but our experience of it is transformed. We can watch the rain lash against the pane. We can see the lightning flash across the sky. but we are no longer lost within it. We are safe, we are grounded, and for the first time, we can simply observe the weather for what it is, a temporary, impersonal, and ever-changing phenomenon. It is vital to understand what mindfulness is and what it is not. There is a common misconception that mindfulness is about emptying the mind, about achieving a state of perfect, blissful blankness. This is not only inaccurate, it is a recipe for frustration. The mind's nature is to think, just as the heart's nature is to beat. Trying to stop your thoughts is as futile as trying to stop the clouds from moving across the sky. The goal is not to have an empty mind, but to have a mind that is known. It is to be aware of the thoughts as they arise, to see them, acknowledge them, and let them pass, without getting swept away by their content. Another misconception is that mindfulness is just a relaxation technique. While a deep sense of calm is very often a beautiful result of the practice, it is not the primary aim. The aim is clarity. The aim is to see things as they truly are. This sometimes means sitting with feelings that are not at all, relaxing grief, restlessness, anger, fear. Mindfulness is the courage to be present with the totality of our experience, the pleasant, the unpleasant, and the neutral, with a steady and compassionate attention. The most direct definition of mindfulness is this: paying attention in the present moment, on purpose, and without judgment. Each part of this phrase is a profound instruction. Paying attention means we are intentionally directing the spotlight of our awareness, rather than letting it be dragged around by every passing distraction. In the present moment is the core of the practice. It is the gentle but firm return from the imaginary worlds of the past and the future to the only reality we ever truly have, which is right here, right now. On purpose means this is not a passive drifting, but a conscious, committed act of training. And finally, without judgment. This is perhaps the most challenging and transformative part. It is the cultivation of a friendly, curious, and kind attitude toward whatever we discover in our inner world. We learn to observe our thoughts, feelings, and sensations as a kind scientist might observe a natural phenomenon with interest and acceptance, rather than with the harsh inner critic we so often employ. The practice itself can begin very simply. You don't need a special cushion or a silent monastery. You can start right now, in the chair you are sitting in. Find a posture that is both comfortable and alert, with your back straight but not stiff. You can close your eyes, or leave them softly open, with your gaze lowered. Begin by bringing your attention into your body. Feel the weight of your body on the chair. Feel the points of contact, the solidity of the floor beneath your feet. This is your first anchor to the present moment. Then, gently guide your attention to the physical sensations of your breath. You don't need to change it, control it, or breathe in any special way. Simply observe it. Feel the cool air entering your nostrils, the slight expansion of your chest and belly, and the gentle release as the warm air leaves your body. This is your home base, the place you will return to. Now, it is a simple guarantee that within a few seconds, your mind will wander. It will be carried away by a thought, a memory, a sound, a plan. This is not a mistake. This is not a failure. This is simply what minds do. The real practice of mindfulness happens in the moment you realize you have wandered. In that moment of realizing, you have woken up, and then, with the gentleness you might use to guide a lost puppy, you simply and kindly escort your attention back to the feeling of the breath. That is all. You will do this again and again and again. The wandering is not the problem. The waking up and the gentle returning, that is the practice. Each return is like a single push-up for your brain, strengthening the muscle of your attention and your compassion. There is a timeless Zen story that perfectly captures the essence of this practice. Two monks, a wise senior monk and a young novice, were on a journey. They came to a river where the current was strong. A beautiful young woman stood by the bank, afraid to cross. Without hesitation, the senior monk walked over, lifted the woman into his arms, carried her across the turbulent water, and set her down gently on the other side. He then bowed and continued on his way. The young novice was aghast. For the next several hours, he walked in agitated silence, his mind churning. His monastic vows strictly forbade touching a woman. How could his master have done such a thing? The transgression grew larger and larger in his mind. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, he burst out, "Master, I must ask you, we are not supposed to touch women. Why did you carry that woman across the river?" The senior monk looked at his young companion with a calm, kind expression. "I left the woman by the riverbank hours ago," he said softly. "Why are you still carrying her?" This story reveals the heart of mindfulness. Life will present us with countless experiences, countless women at the river. The practice of mindfulness is the art of leaving them by the riverbank. It is the ability to have an experience and then to let it go, without the mind clinging to it, analyzing it, judging it, and carrying its heavy weight for hours, days, or even years. This practice is not confined to a meditation cushion. You can bring this quality of non-judgmental awareness to any part of your day. You can drink a cup of tea mindfully, truly feeling the warmth of the mug, smelling the aroma, and tasting each sip, instead of drinking it on autopilot, while your mind is a million miles away. You can take a mindful walk, feeling the sensation of your feet on the earth with each step. You can even listen mindfully, giving another person the rare and precious gift of your full, undivided attention, listening not just to their words, but to the feeling behind them, without planning your own response. This is how the watcher at the window becomes a participant in life, but a new kind of participant tone, who is fully present, awake, and engaged, yet not swept away. So, mindfulness provides us with the stable ground on which to stand, the quiet room from which to observe, to maintain this stability, especially when the weather of our mind is particularly turbulent. It helps to have a reliable and constant anchor. While any of the senses can serve as this anchor, there is one that is uniquely powerful. It is always with us, from the moment of our birth to the moment of our death. It is the most intimate and fundamental rhythm of our lives. It is the breath. To learn to rest our attention on this gentle, life-giving current is to discover the greatest tool we have for anchoring ourselves in the present moment. And it is to this specific, profound practice that we will now turn. Having discovered the quiet, observing space of mindfulness, the watcher at the window, we now seek to strengthen our ability to remain there, to stay present amidst the pull of the past and the push of the future. Requires an anchor, a steady point in the turning world of our own mind. While we can be mindful of anything, the Buddha pointed to one object of meditation as being uniquely powerful, accessible, and profound. It is the breath, the practice of mindfulness of breathing, known in Pali as anapanasati, is the cornerstone of mental training. It is the simple, yet radical, act of resting our awareness on the gentle rhythm of our own inhalation and exhalation. The breath is the ultimate anchor in the storm, the unbreakable thread that runs through every moment of our lives, patiently waiting to guide us home to the calm harbor of the present moment. Why is something as simple as the breath so central to this profound path? Firstly, the breath is unfailingly, relentlessly present. It is with you from your first cry at birth to your final exhalation at death. You do not need to seek it out. You do not need to create it. It is always here, a constant, reliable companion. In a world of endless distraction and complexity, the breath is an oasis of radical simplicity. Secondly, the breath exists only in the now. You cannot take a breath that is in the past, nor can you take a breath that is in the future. To be aware of your breathing is, by definition, to be grounded in the present moment. It is a direct and immediate antidote to the mind's tendency to ruminate on what has been or worry about what is to come. Each conscious breath is a tether pulling you back from the imaginary worlds of yesterday and tomorrow into the living reality of this very second. Furthermore, the breath acts as a miraculous bridge. It connects the conscious and the unconscious, the voluntary and the involuntary. For most of the day, your breathing happens on its own, managed by the ancient wisdom of your nervous system. Yet, you can also choose to control it, to make it deeper or shallower, or to hold it. This unique position makes it the perfect meeting point of mind and body. It is where the physical and the mental are woven together. As you place your attention on the breath, you are not just observing a physical process. You are observing the very mind that observes. Finally, the breath is a perfectly honest mirror of your inner state. When you are frightened or anxious, your breath becomes shallow, rapid, and tight. When you are angry, it can be forceful and jagged. When you are calm and at ease, your breath is naturally slow, deep, and gentle. By learning to watch the breath without judgment, you develop an intimate understanding of your own emotional landscape, and a remarkable feedback loop begins to form. Just as the mind affects the breath, so too does the breath affect the mind. By consciously inviting the breath to be slower and deeper, you send a powerful signal of safety and calm back to your nervous system, gently soothing the very agitation you are observing. The formal practice of anapanasati is a deep dive into this wisdom. It begins, as always, with finding a posture of stillness and dignity, whether in a chair or on a cushion. Allow your spine to be upright, embodying alertness, and allow your shoulders to soften, embodying ease. Let your hands rest comfortably in your lap. Close your eyes, or let your gaze rest unfocused, a few feet in front of you. Now, bring the gentle spotlight of your awareness to the physical sensations of breathing. The instruction is not to think about the breath, but to feel the breath. Find the place in your body where the sensations are most clear to you. For some, this is the cool touch of the air at the tip of the nostrils. For others, it might be the subtle rise and fall of the chest, or the gentle expansion and contraction of the abdomen. There is no right place. There is only the place that is right for you. Choose one spot and allow your attention to rest there, as lightly as a butterfly rests on a flower. Your only task is to feel one breath, from its beginning, through its middle, to its end, and then the next one. You are not trying to make anything happen. You are simply receiving each breath as a gift. And as you do this, you will be visited by the monkey mind. This is the part of our consciousness that is restless, chattering, and endlessly bored with the present moment. It will dangle a juicy memory in front of you. It will wave an urgent to-do list in your face. It will create a compelling fantasy or a nagging worry, and it will pull your attention away from the breath. The moment you notice that your mind has wandered is the most important moment in your entire practice. That moment of noticing is a moment of pure mindfulness. There is no need for scolding or frustration. Do not get angry at the monkey. Simply notice where it has gone here, thinking about work, planning dinner, and then, with infinite patience and kindness, gently guide your attention back to the anchor, back to the simple, physical sensation of this breath. Right now, this return is the essential movement of meditation. The breath is your home base, and every time you return to it, you are strengthening your capacity for calm, focus, and self-compassion. A master carpenter, when needing to saw a long, straight line in a piece of wood, does not simply rely on an unsteady hand and a good eye. He takes a tool called an ink line. He stretches the string, coated in colored chalk, from one end of the board to the other, pulling it taut. Then, he plucks the string in the middle. It snaps against the wood, leaving a perfectly straight, unambiguous line. This line becomes his guide. His saw may still waver, but he always has the clear mark to return to, ensuring the final cut is true. In our practice, the breath is this ink line. Our mind is the unsteady saw, prone to wandering off course. By returning our attention again and again to the straight, steady, and simple line of the breath, we are training the mind to move with focus and clarity. We are creating a path of stillness through the rough and knotted timber of our habitual thinking. This practice is not only for the meditation cushion, it is an emergency toolkit you can carry with you into every moment of your life. The next time you feel a surge of anger in traffic, or a wave of anxiety before a meeting, or the sting of a critical remark, try the 3-breath rescue. Pause for just a moment. Stop everything. Take one conscious breath, and as you breathe out, intentionally soften the muscles in your shoulders and your jaw. Then take a second conscious breath, simply feeling the air move in and out, and then a third, following the sensation all the way to the very end of the exhalation. This simple act, taking no more than 10 seconds, can radically change your experience. It creates a circuit breaker in the frantic wiring of reactivity. It gives you a sacred pause, a moment of space between a stimulus and your response. And in that space lies your freedom, the freedom to choose a wiser, more compassionate way of being. Through the breath, we learn to anchor ourselves. We discover a place of refuge that is always available, a calm center in the midst of life's inevitable storms. And once we feel truly anchored, we are no longer so afraid of the ocean. We no longer need to fight the waves of thought and feeling. We can develop the confidence to simply be present with our experience, knowing we have a safe harbor to return to. This newfound stability allows us to look more deeply, to observe the nature of the ocean itself with greater clarity. And as we watch from this steady vantage point, we begin to notice something extraordinary. We see that everything is in motion. The waves of thought, the currents of feeling, the clouds in our mental sky. Nothing is static. Nothing is solid. Everything is rising, and everything is falling away. We are now stable enough to face one of the most profound and liberating insights of the path, the universal truth of impermanence. Securely fastened to the anchor of the breath, we find ourselves stable enough not to be swept away by the currents of the mind. For the first time, perhaps, we can simply sit on the shore of our own awareness and watch the vast ocean of our experience. And as we watch with this newfound steadiness, a profound and unmistakable pattern begins to emerge. We notice that nothing is still. Absolutely everything is in motion. Thoughts bubble up and dissolve. Feelings crest like waves and then recede into the depths. Sounds appear at the edge of our hearing and then fade into silence. Even the sensations in our body are in constant flux and itch. A warmth, a coolness, a pressure, all rising and falling like the tide. This direct seeing of the ceaseless, dynamic, flowing nature of reality is the insight into anicca, the universal truth of impermanence. It is the understanding that the entire universe, from the farthest star to the most intimate thought, is not a collection of solid nouns, but a symphony of fluid verbs. It is all a process of becoming and a process of passing away. To the part of us that craves security and control, this truth can initially sound terrifying. A world where nothing lasts feels like a world built on shifting sands, offering no solid ground to stand on. We spend most of our lives resisting this fundamental law. We try to freeze moments of happiness, holding on to them with a white-knuckled grip. We build monuments, write histories, and create rigid identities, all in a desperate attempt to carve something permanent out of the relentless flow of time. We fight against aging, we deny loss, and we cling to our opinions as if they were life rafts. This struggle against the very nature of reality, this attempt to build a dam in the middle of a flowing river, is the source of immense tension, anxiety, and sorrow. But the path of wisdom invites us to see anicca not as a threat, but as a profound and liberating gift. Let us see how this liberation works. When we are caught in the grip of a powerful and painful emotion, a wave of deep sadness, a surge of consuming anger, a fog of anxiety or suffering, is magnified by the hidden belief that it will last forever. It feels solid, permanent, and all-encompassing. It feels like this is the new reality. But when we have touched the wisdom of impermanence, a small space of relief opens up. We can whisper to ourselves the ultimate truth: this too shall pass. This is not a form of spiritual bypassing or denial. It is a statement of fundamental law. The anger, the sadness, the fear, they are weather patterns, not the sky itself. Like a storm cloud, they have arisen due to certain conditions, and when the conditions change, they will inevitably dissipate. Knowing this does not magically erase the pain, but it removes the second arrow of panic and despair. It allows us to endure the storm with the quiet confidence that the sun will, eventually, shine again. Conversely, the truth of impermanence imbues our moments of joy with a new depth and poignancy. We often spoil our own happiness with the anxiety of its ending. On a beautiful vacation, we start to worry about returning to work. In a loving embrace, a subtle fear of future loss can creep in. We are so busy trying to possess the happy moment, to make it permanent, that we fail to fully inhabit it. Anicca frees us from this trap. When we know, truly know, that this beautiful moment is as fleeting as a cherry blossom in the wind, we are moved to give it our full attention. We cherish it more completely. We can savor the taste of a perfect meal, listen deeply to a piece of music, or look into the eyes of a loved one with a newfound sense of preciousness. We learn to love the dance without demanding that the dancers freeze in place. This is a more profound, more peaceful kind of joy, a joy that is free from the poison of clinging. You can observe this truth directly in the laboratory of your own body and mind. Return to your anchor, the breath. Notice that each breath is a complete drama of anicca. It arises, it exists for a short while, and it passes away, creating the space for the next breath to arise. No two breaths are ever identical. It is a constant river of sensation, flowing in and flowing out. Now, watch your thoughts. Where do they come from? You do not decide your next thought. It simply appears, as if from nowhere. It lingers for a moment, and then, just as mysteriously, it vanishes. A thought about your day gives way to a memory from childhood, which gives way to a line from a song. The mind is a waterfall of these transient events, not a solid block of stone. To see this is to begin to loosen your identification with your thoughts. You are not your thoughts. You are the spacious awareness in which the thoughts are allowed to play out their brief existence. There is an ancient saying, attributed to the Greek philosopher Heraclitus, that states, "You cannot step into the same river twice." This beautifully captures a part of this truth. You go down to the riverbank, you dip your foot in, and the water that touches you is fresh, new water that has flowed from upstream. A moment later, that water is gone, replaced by new water. The river is a constant process of change, but the Buddhist insight takes this one crucial step further. It says, "You cannot step into the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and you are not the same person." The you who steps into the river is also in constant flux. The cells in your body are changing. Your mood is changing. The thoughts and perceptions flowing through your mind are changing. The observer is just as much a part of the river as the water itself. There is no solid, separate self standing on the bank, observing a separate river. There is only the flowing, interconnected, unified process of rivering. We are not things. We are events. We are not nouns. We are verbs. Our suffering, then, is not caused by the fact of change. It is caused entirely by our argument with the fact of change. We stand on the riverbank of our lives, shouting at the water to stop flowing. We build elaborate houses of belief and identity right at the water's edge, and then weep with despair when the current inevitably rises and washes them away. The practice of embracing anicca is the practice of learning to flow with the river. It is the wisdom to build our house on higher ground, a house of awareness that can watch the changing seasons of our own life with grace and equanimity. It is the deep relaxation that comes from finally giving up the impossible fight, from unclenching the fist of our resistance and allowing life to be what it is, a dynamic, unpredictable, and miraculous flow. As we rest in this understanding, a powerful and penetrating question naturally arises. We have seen that our body is a process, constantly changing. We have seen that our feelings are like waves, rising and falling. We have seen that our thoughts are like clouds, drifting and dissolving. Everything we have ever identified as being me or mine is impermanent, transient, and selfless. The breath, the thoughts, the feelings, the sensations, they are all part of the river. So, the question becomes, who then is the watcher? If everything is changing, where is this solid, continuous, unchanging I that we believe ourselves to be? Who is this self that we spend our entire lives trying to please, protect, and promote? As we look deeply into the flowing river of our own experience, we search for a permanent, separate self, and we find that it is nowhere to be found. This startling and ultimately liberating discovery is the gateway to the next great insight of the path, the truth of anatta, or no, self. As we stand on the banks of the river of impermanence, watching the ceaseless flow of our own experience, a question of profound significance emerges. We have seen that our body is not static, our feelings are not permanent, and our thoughts are as fleeting as clouds. Everything we once took to be a solid, stable me has revealed itself to be a dynamic, ever-changing process. This leads us to the most radical and liberating inquiry of all. If everything is in flux, where is the fixed, continuous self who is experiencing it? When we search for this independent, unchanging core, this chief executive officer, in the headquarters of our mind, we make a startling discovery. It is nowhere to be found. This insight is the heart of the teaching of anatta, often translated as no self, or perhaps more accurately, not self. This is not a denial of our existence, but a profound re-examination of its true nature. It is the key that unlocks the deepest prison of all, the prison of the ego. To understand this, the Buddhist tradition invites us to look at our own experience, not as a monolithic whole, but as a combination of 5 distinct processes, known as the 5 aggregates, or skandhas. This is a way of deconstructing the machine of the self to see its component parts. The first is form, our physical body. We have already seen through the lens of Anika that this body is a constantly changing process of cells, sensations, and elements. It is more like a colony than a statue. Is this ever-changing form the permanent you, or is it simply a biological process we are temporarily inhabiting? The second is feeling. This refers to the raw, immediate sensations that arise when our senses make contact with the world, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. A cool breeze on the skin is pleasant. The sound of a siren is unpleasant. The feeling of our clothes is neutral. These feelings are like fleeting ripples on a pond, arising and vanishing in an instant. Are these transient feelings the real you? The third aggregate is perception. This is the mental function that recognizes and labels our experience. It sees a collection of colors and shapes and says, "That is a tree." It hears a particular tone of voice and labels it angry. It is the brain's pattern recognition software. This too is a process, conditioned by our past experiences and culture. Is this labeling faculty the real you? The fourth aggregate is mental formations. This is a vast category that includes all our habits, memories, biases, opinions, beliefs, moods, and intentions. It is what we would typically call our personality, but these formations are not a solid core. They are learned patterns. Our opinions change, our moods shift, and our habits can be retrained. Are these conditioned, impermanent mental patterns the real you? Finally, the fifth aggregate is consciousness. This is the fundamental quality of knowing, the raw awareness that arises through our sixth sense, door-seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking. But this consciousness is never found alone. It is always consciousness of something. There is seeing consciousness, hearing consciousness, thinking consciousness. It is like a light that only exists when it has an object to illuminate. It flickers on and off, moment by moment, completely dependent on conditions. Is this flickering, dependent awareness the ultimate, independent you? When we perform this investigation, looking for a permanent, independent owner or controller in any of these 5 processes, we come up empty-handed every time. The self, the I, the ego we hold so dear, is not a thing, but a story. It is a convenient label that the mind applies to the dynamic, interacting flow of these 5 processes, just as we apply the label river to the flowing of water. This is not to say that nothing exists. It is to say that nothing exists in the way we think it does. The self is a construct, a habit of thought, not an essential truth. A beautiful story from the Taoist sage Zhuangzi illustrates this perfectly. A man is in his boat, rowing across a river on a misty morning. Suddenly, another boat crashes into his. His first reaction is a surge of anger. He shouts insults, cursing the careless person who has hit him. He is ready for a confrontation, but as he peers through the mist, he sees that there is no one in the other boat. It is an empty boat, drifting aimlessly in the current. In that instant, all his anger vanishes. There is no one to be angry at. The collision is the same. The damage to his boat is the same, but his entire inner experience is transformed simply by the realization that the other boat is empty. Zhuangzi's insight is this: the boat was always empty. Our suffering in life, our anger, our resentment, our defensiveness comes from our deep-seated habit of populating the world with drivers. We believe every boat that bumps into us has a malicious or incompetent person at the helm. We take things personally because we believe there is a personal self to be offended and a personal other doing the offending. The practice of anatta is the gradual realization that all the boats are empty, including our own. The events of our lives unfold due to a vast, impersonal web of causes and conditions, not because of a solid me being victimized by a solid you. This is not a nihilistic teaching that declares you do not exist. You are reading these words. You are breathing. You are alive. But your existence is more like that of a flame than a stone. A flame is not a static object. It is a dynamic process of combustion, a constant interplay of fuel, heat, and oxygen. A river is not a thing, but a process of flowing. In the same way, you are not a fixed noun, but a living verb. You are a process of seeing, a process of feeling, a process of thinking, a process of being. And this is the most empowering news imaginable. If you were a stone, a fixed, unchanging self, then genuine change would be impossible. You would be trapped forever in your current personality and habits. But because you are a process, you are fluid, you are free. You have the capacity to change the patterns and habits that cause you suffering, and to cultivate the ones that lead to peace and wisdom. The freedom of this insight is immense. When you begin to loosen the grip on the idea of a fixed self, you take things less personally. The criticism of others no longer feels like an attack on your essential being. When there is no solid ego to defend, you become less defensive. When there is no me to constantly compare with others, the fires of jealousy and pride begin to cool. When you realize you are not the center of the universe, you can finally see the universe more clearly, and a natural compassion for all the other empty boats arises. We began this journey of insight by seeing that everything in our experience is a flowing river, the truth of anicca. Now, we have looked into that river and seen that the swimmer, the self, is also part of the flow, the truth of anatta. The solid walls that we have built between me and the world are revealed to be made of mist. We are not separate from the river. We are the river, and so is everyone else. We are all interconnected processes, woven from the same threads of form, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness. To see this profound interconnection, to feel this shared, selfless nature of our being, is to dissolve the illusion of separation that is the root of all fear and conflict. The heart, finally freed from the cramped prison of the ego, naturally and spontaneously opens. And this open heart is the source of the warmest, most healing quality we can cultivate. The quality of metta, of unconditional loving, kindness. Having journeyed through the profound and sometimes unsettling insights of impermanence and not self, we arrive at a place of great openness. The solid walls of the ego, which once seemed like an impenetrable fortress, have been revealed to be as ephemeral as mist. This deconstruction is not an end in itself. It is a ground-clearing operation. It creates a space, a fertile emptiness in the heart, where something new and beautiful can be intentionally cultivated. The path of wisdom does not leave this space empty. It offers us a practice to actively fill it with warmth, with connection, and with a boundless, benevolent goodwill. This practice is called metta, a Pali word that translates as loving kindness. If the insight into not self is the act of opening the window of a stuffy room to let the fresh air in, then metta is the practice of turning our face toward the sun, allowing its warmth to soak into our very being, so that we may then radiate that warmth back out into the world. It is the intentional cultivation of a heart that wishes well for all, without exception and without condition. Crucially, this practice begins in a place that may feel, for many of us, the most challenging and unnatural of all. It begins with ourselves. Our culture often teaches us that focusing on ourselves is selfish, and our inner critic relentlessly tells us we are not worthy of our own kindness. We are conditioned to seek validation from outside, and so the act of offering it to ourselves can feel awkward, even fraudulent. But the wisdom of the path is uncompromising on this point. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot offer genuine warmth to others if your own heart is a cold and desolate landscape of self-judgment. To attempt to love others while holding oneself in contempt is like trying to build a house on a foundation of sand. The practice of offering loving kindness to ourselves is the most fundamental act of healing. It is not about inflating the ego or becoming arrogant. It is about ending the exhausting inner civil war. It is about creating a baseline of inner safety and friendliness, a refuge within our own heart. It is the radical recognition that you, in your shared, imperfect humanity, are just as deserving of care, happiness, and peace as any other being on this earth. The practice of metta meditation is a gentle, systematic training of the heart. We begin by finding our comfortable, dignified posture and taking a few moments to settle in, anchored by the rhythm of the breath. Then, we begin to silently offer a set of simple, benevolent phrases. The classic phrases are, "May I be safe," "May I be healthy," "May I be happy," "May I live with ease." You can adapt these words to whatever resonates most deeply with you. The words themselves are just the container. The true practice is the intention, the feeling, tone that you pour into them. In the first stage, you direct these phrases toward yourself. Silently, gently, you repeat, "May I be safe from inner and outer harm. May I be healthy in body and in mind. May I be truly happy. May I live my life with a sense of ease and well-being." Don't worry if you don't feel a sudden rush of emotion. The mind may object, bringing up all the reasons you don't deserve this. Simply notice those objections, as you would any other thought, and gently return to the phrases, to the tender intention of wishing yourself well. Once you have established some sense of this warmth for yourself, the second stage is to expand the circle. Bring to mind a benefactor, or a dearly loved close friend, a family member, a mentor, or even a beloved pet. Picture them clearly in your mind's eye. Now, redirect the phrases toward them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. Allow the natural feelings of warmth and appreciation you have for this person to flow with the words. Feel what it is like to genuinely wish for another's happiness. In the third stage, we stretch the heart further. Bring to mind a neutral person, someone you see in your daily life, but for whom you feel neither like nor dislike her. Cashier at the grocery store, a person on your daily commute, a neighbor you barely know. Hold their image in your mind and extend the very same wishes to them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. This stage is powerful because it helps us to see past the roles people play and to connect with their basic humanity, their shared desire to be happy and free from suffering. The fourth stage is the great challenge and the great purifier. Here, we are invited to bring to mind a difficult person, someone with whom we have conflict, frustration, or resentment. This is not about condoning harmful actions or forcing forgiveness. It is, at its core, an act of freeing your own heart from the prison of hatred, recognizing that this person is also a suffering being, caught in their own confusion and pain. You try, as best you can, to offer them the same basic wishes. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. If this feels impossible, that is perfectly okay. You can simply wish, may you be free from the suffering that causes you to act in this way, or you can return to offering metta to yourself. The aim is not perfection, but the gentle, courageous intention to soften the armor around your own heart. Finally, in the fifth stage, we let the circle become boundless. We radiate this loving kindness in all directions. First to everyone in the room with you, then the building, the neighborhood, the city. Extend it to all people in your country and all people on your continent. Let it expand to cover the entire planet, holding every man, woman, and child in this field of benevolent intention. Extend it to the animals, the plants, to all beings seen and unseen, in all realms of existence. May all beings be safe. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be happy. May all beings live with ease. You rest in this state of boundless, impartial goodwill, like a sun shining its light on everything without discrimination. It is important to remember that metta is not an emotion we must force. It is an intention we cultivate. Some days, the practice will be accompanied by beautiful feelings of warmth and love. Other days, it might feel dry, mechanical, or even met with resistance. This is not a problem. The practice is not about chasing a particular feeling. It is about the patient, steadfast training of the heart's intention. We are planting seeds of kindness. Whether we feel the flower bloom today is less important than the fact that we are faithfully tending the garden. The power of this practice is not to be underestimated. There is a story of the Buddha's jealous cousin, Devadatta, who plotted to kill him. He had the ferocious royal elephant, Nalagiri, intoxicated with alcohol and set loose on the path where the Buddha was walking. As the elephant charged, screaming and destroying everything in its path, people fled in terror. The Buddha's attendant, Ananda, tried to stand in front of him, but the Buddha gently moved him aside. He stood his ground, facing the rampaging beast, and radiated a powerful, silent field of pure, unconditional loving kindness. As the elephant entered this aura of metta, its rage began to dissolve. Its steps slowed, its intoxicated fury subsided, and it walked calmly to the Buddha, kneeling before him and allowing the Buddha to gently stroke its forehead. This story illustrates that loving kindness is not a weak, passive, or sentimental state. It is a profound inner strength, a spiritual force capable of disarming the most powerful hatred and fear, both within ourselves and in the world around us. This practice of metta is the direct, specific antidote to the poison of ill will, aversion, and anger. And anger is one of the most powerful clouds that can obscure the natural radiance of our mind. It is a primary obstacle to peace, but it is not the only one. There are other, more subtle patterns of mind, other inner ghosts that can haunt our meditation and our lives, creating distraction and dullness. Having learned how to meet the fire of anger with the cool water of loving kindness, we are now better equipped to turn our attention to these other hindrances, to learn their names, understand their ways, and discover how to skillfully work with them as well. As we cultivate the warmth of loving kindness, we find a powerful antidote to the cold grip of anger and ill will. The heart begins to soften, and a sense of gentle friendliness can permeate our being. Yet, as we continue to sit with ourselves, watching the landscape of the mind, we notice that anger is not the only cloud that drifts across our inner sky. There are other visitors, other subtle energies that can disturb our peace, obscure our clarity, and drain our motivation. The ancient teachings of the path gave these common obstacles a specific name: the 5 hindrances, or nivarana. They are like ghosts that haunt the house of our mind, not because they are inherently evil, but because we have not yet learned to turn on the light, see them for what they are, and relate to them with wisdom. To name these ghosts is the first step toward dispelling their power. It is to know the territory of our own confusion so that we can navigate it skillfully, rather than wandering through it blindly. The first hindrance is sensory desire. This is the magnetic pull of the senses, the leaning forward energy that seeks pleasure. In meditation, it might manifest as a fantasy about a delicious meal, a preoccupation with a song stuck in your head, or planning a future vacation. In daily life, it is the constant, low-grade craving for something more, something different, something better than what is here right now. It is the engine of our consumer culture, the restlessness that keeps us scrolling, shopping, and seeking the next hit of pleasant stimulation. The antidote is not to despise pleasure, but to see its nature clearly. We can contemplate its impermanence, how quickly the taste of the food fades, how the thrill of the purchase wears off. We can bring a gentle, non-judgmental awareness to the wanting mind itself, observing it as a pattern of energy without needing to act on its command. The second hindrance is ill will or aversion. This is the opposite energy, the pushing away of any experience we find unpleasant. It is the anger, frustration, resentment, and irritation that arises when things don't go our way. We have already explored its primary antidote, the profound practice of metta, or loving kindness. When we meet the tight, contracted energy of aversion with the spacious, warm intention of goodwill, the hatred cannot find a solid place to land. It begins to soften and dissolve in the face of a compassionate heart. We learn to meet pain not with resistance, but with a gentle and caring attention, transforming the experience from one of personal affliction to one of shared humanity. The third hindrance is sloth and torpor. This is not simple physical tiredness. It is a deep mental heaviness, a dullness and fogginess of the mind. It feels like trying to walk through thick mud. The body feels heavy, the eyelids droop, and the mind becomes sluggish and resistant to effort. It is a sinking energy that can easily lead to giving up on our practice. To work with this hindrance, we must arouse energy. We can consciously brighten our attention, as if turning up a dimmer switch in the mind. We can stand up and do some walking meditation. We can gently splash cool water on our face. We can also reflect on our deepest inspiration for being on this path, remembering the why that fuels our journey. We meet this sinking energy, not with more sinking, but with a wise and compassionate infusion of vitality. The fourth hindrance is restlessness and worry. This is the agitated, monkey mind in its most active state. Restlessness is a physical and mental inability to settle, a feeling of being buzzed or wired, constantly needing to fidget or move. Worry is its cognitive companion, the mind that endlessly churns over past mistakes or anxiously rehearses future scenarios. It is the energy of what if and if only. The primary tool for working with this scattered state is a patient and dedicated return to our anchor, the breath. Each time we notice the mind spinning out, we gently guide it back to the simple, physical sensation of breathing. We can also mentally note the state, worrying, which helps to create a space of observation around it, so we are no longer completely identified with the content of the worry. This hindrance is like a frantic bee trapped in a jar. The breath is the act of gently unscrewing the lid to let it fly free. The fifth and final hindrance is skeptical doubt. This is a corrosive, indecisive state of mind that undermines our practice from within. It is not the intelligent inquiry that seeks to understand, but a cynical, wavering uncertainty that asks, does this stuff really work? Am I doing it right? Is this the right teacher? Am I capable of this? This hindrance paralyzes our effort and drains our faith. To work with it, we can seek clarification on points we don't understand, but more often, the most effective antidote is to simply trust the process and keep practicing. We can recall moments of clarity or peace we have experienced, however fleeting, as evidence that the path bears fruit. We gently put the doubts aside and commit to the simple act of sitting, of watching, of breathing, allowing the direct experience of the practice, over time, to dissolve the clouds of uncertainty. The Buddha offered a powerful and beautiful analogy for understanding these hindrances and the freedom that comes from overcoming them. He compared a mind free from hindrances to a person who is healthy, wealthy, and free. He said that being in the grip of sensory desire is like being in debt. You are constantly trying to pay back the loan of a fleeting pleasure, and you are never truly at peace. Freedom from desire is like becoming debt-free, a state of immense relief and solvency. Being in the grip of ill will is like having a serious illness. Your energy is drained, your perspective is soured, and you cannot enjoy life. Freedom from ill will is like recovering your health, feeling vibrant and capable again. Being caught in sloth and torpor is like being locked in a prison. Your world is small, dark, and you are unable to move freely. Freedom from it is like being released from jail, stepping out into the bright sunshine and open air. Being overcome by restlessness and worry is like being a slave, constantly forced to run errands for a frantic and demanding master. Freedom from it is like becoming your own master, able to rest and direct your energy as you choose. And finally, being lost in doubt is like traveling through a dangerous and trackless desert, unsure of your way and fearful of every shadow. Freedom from doubt is like arriving safely at a welcoming town on the other side, knowing you are on solid ground. To see the hindrances in this light transforms them from personal failings into impersonal conditions. They are not who we are. They are simply unskillful mental weather patterns. More than that, they become our greatest teachers. Their arising points directly to the places where we are still attached, where our hearts are still not free. The arising of desire shows us our clinging. The arising of anger shows us our fears. The arising of doubt shows us where our faith needs to be strengthened. By learning to meet these ghosts with mindful, compassionate attention, we are no longer their victims. We become wise inhabitants of our own minds. This close observation of the arising and passing of these mental states reveals a fundamental law of nature, that our states of mind have direct and predictable consequences. A mind clouded by the hindrances leads to confusion and stress. A mind free from the hindrances naturally experiences clarity and peace. This direct seeing of cause and effect within our own consciousness is the very foundation for understanding the universal principle of intentional action and its results, the law known as karma. As we become intimate observers of our own minds, learning to name the hindrances and work with them skillfully, we begin to perceive a profound underlying pattern. We see, in real time, that when our mind is caught in the grip of desire or ill will, a certain kind of constricted, stressful experience follows. And when we are able to meet our experience with mindfulness and loving kindness, a sense of peace and openness is the result. This direct observation of cause and effect playing out within our own consciousness is the key to understanding one of the most powerful and often misunderstood principles of the path, the universal law of karma. Stripped of all superstition and mystical baggage, karma is simply the law of cause and effect as it applies to our intentional actions. It is the universe's law of psychological physics. It states that every action, word, and thought that is driven by a conscious intention plants a seed, and that seed will inevitably ripen into a corresponding fruit. It is absolutely crucial to distinguish what karma is from what it is not. Karma is not fate. It is not a pre-written destiny that we are powerless to change. In fact, it is the very opposite of fatalism. The law of karma states that you are the creator of your own reality in every moment. The future is not fixed. It is being actively shaped by the quality of your intentions right now. This is a teaching of radical empowerment and profound personal responsibility. It moves us from the role of a passive victim of circumstance to the role of the active architect of our own lives. Furthermore, karma is not a system of reward and punishment meted out by some cosmic judge. It is an impersonal, natural law, as impartial as gravity. If you hold your hand in a fire, you will be burned. The fire is not punishing you. It is simply expressing its nature. In the same way, if you act with an intention of hatred, you condition your own mind towards suffering. The law of karma is not judging you. Your own action is simply creating its natural result within your own consciousness. The heart of this entire principle lies in a single, powerful word: intention. The Buddha declared, "It is intention, monks, that I call karma. Having intended, one acts through body, speech, and mind." This is the key that unlocks the whole teaching. The karmic power of an action is determined not by the external act itself, but by the motivation, the will, the intention behind it. Imagine a surgeon holding a scalpel with great concentration and a deep intention to heal. She makes an incision in her patient's body. Now imagine a thief in a dark alley. With an intention born of greed and hatred, he uses a knife to harm someone and steal their wallet. The physical action cutting flesh with a sharp blade is superficially similar, but the intention behind each act is worlds apart. The surgeon's action, rooted in compassion, plants a wholesome seed in her own mind, conditioning it toward healing and care. The thief's action, rooted in aversion and greed, plants an unwholesome seed, conditioning his mind toward violence and suffering. We cannot always control the external results of our actions. The surgeon's patient may still die. The thief may find the wallet is empty, but we can always, with practice, become more aware of and responsible for the intentions that fuel our actions. And it is these intentions that shape our inner world, which is the only world we ever truly inhabit. Think of your mind as a garden. Every moment of your life, with every intentional thought, word, or deed, you are planting a seed in this garden. An act of generosity, a kind word, a thought of forgiveness. These are like planting the seeds of fragrant flowers and nourishing fruits. At first, you might not see the result, but if you continue to cultivate these wholesome seeds, over time, your inner landscape will become a beautiful, peaceful, and vibrant place. Conversely, an act of cruelty, a hateful word, a greedy or jealous thought, these are like planting the seeds of thorny weeds and poisonous plants. If you continue to cultivate these unwholesome seeds, over time your inner garden will become a choked, toxic, and painful place to live. Most of us go through our lives as unconscious gardeners, scattering seeds of all kinds without any awareness. And then we wonder why our minds are such a tangled mess. The practice of mindfulness, guided by the wisdom of karma, is the act of becoming a conscious gardener. It is learning to recognize the quality of the seeds in our hand before we plant them, and intentionally choosing to cultivate the ones that lead to beauty, harmony, and peace. The transformative power of this principle is shown in the dramatic story of a man named Angulimala. His name literally meant garland of fingers because he was a terrifying serial killer who wore a necklace made from the fingers of his many victims. One day, the Buddha was walking near the forest where Angulimala lived. Villagers warned him not to go, but the Buddha proceeded calmly. Angulimala saw him and began to chase him, intending to make the Buddha his next victim. But a strange thing happened. Though the Buddha was only walking at a normal pace, Angulimala, running with all his might, could not catch up to him. Exasperated, he shouted, "Stop, monk!" The Buddha, still walking, replied, "I have stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not stopped." Angulimala was confused. "What do you mean?" he asked. The Buddha explained, "I have stopped doing harm to living beings. You have not." In that moment, confronted by the Buddha's utter fearlessness and profound compassion, Angulimala's entire world was shattered. The weight of his horrific actions crashed down upon him. He threw away his weapons, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and asked to become a monk. Despite the immense negative karma he had created, his complete transformation of intention in the present was so powerful that through diligent practice, he eventually became a fully enlightened saint, an arahant. His story is a brilliant testament to the truth that our past does not have to define our future. Karma is not a fixed destiny. No matter how many unwholesome seeds we have planted, the present moment always offers us a fresh patch of soil and the chance to plant a new kind. The law of karma, then, is not a doctrine of fear, but a call to freedom. It is the ultimate invitation to wake up and take responsibility for the quality of our lives. It provides the most compelling why for living a skillful and ethical life, because our happiness and the happiness of others depend on it. It moves us from a passive hope that things will get better into the active, conscious cultivation of the causes of that betterment. If we truly accept that we are the gardeners of our own minds, that every intention matters, then the path forward becomes clear. We need a practical guide for how to act, how to speak, and how to work in ways that plant the seeds of serenity, not suffering. The Eightfold Path provides this exact blueprint, and the foundation of this skillful living begins with our most common, powerful, and often most unconscious form of action, our speech. Grounded in the understanding that every intention plants a seed, we now turn to the most fertile soil where those seeds are sown, our daily interactions with the world. The wisdom of karma provides the why for skillful living. The Noble Eightfold Path provides the how. We begin this practical application with the first pillar of ethical conduct, or sila, and the foundation of our conduct, the primary bridge between our inner world and the outer world, is our speech. Every word we utter is an action. It is a force sent out into the world, capable of healing or harming, building or destroying, clarifying or confusing. The practice of right speech, or samavacha, is the conscious and compassionate art of using this power skillfully. Think of your words like echoes in a valley. Whatever you shout into the vastness of the world, be it anger, kindness, truth, or falsehood, will eventually echo back, shaping not only the perceptions of others, but the very quality of your own mind and your own reality. The practice of right speech is traditionally understood through four key aspects, four gates that a word must pass through before it is spoken. The first is abstaining from false speech. At its most basic level, this is a commitment not to lie, not to intentionally deceive others. But it goes much deeper than that. It is a commitment to reality itself. It means refraining from the subtle economies with the truth, the exaggerations we use to make a story more interesting, the white lies we tell to avoid minor discomfort, and the promises we don't intend to keep. It is the practice of aligning our words with what is true and verifiable. When our speech is grounded in truth, our mind becomes grounded in clarity. We build a foundation of integrity, and from this integrity, a deep sense of self-trust and fearlessness can grow. We no longer need to keep track of our deceptions. We can simply rest in the peace of what is real. The second aspect is abstaining from divisive or slanderous speech. This is the refusal to use our words as weapons to drive people apart. It is a commitment to refrain from gossip that damages another's reputation, from backbiting, and from spreading rumors that create discord, suspicion, and hostility. It is recognizing that when we speak ill of another, the primary poison enters our own heart, conditioning our mind toward negativity and cynicism. The positive cultivation of this principle is to use our speech to build bridges. It is to speak in ways that encourage harmony and reconciliation. When others are in conflict, we seek to highlight their common ground. We speak of others' good qualities. We use our words to mend, to unite, and to foster a sense of shared community and mutual respect. The third aspect is abstaining from harsh or abusive speech. This means letting go of words born of anger. It is the conscious decision not to use insults, sarcasm, yelling, or any form of verbal aggression that is intended to belittle, humiliate, or wound another person. It is recognizing that harsh words are like throwing embers. We are bound to burn our own hands in the process. The positive practice here is the cultivation of gentle speech. The Buddha described this as speech that is pleasing to the ear, affectionate, that goes to the heart, is courteous, and agreeable to many. This is where our practice of metta flows directly into our communication. We learn to speak with kindness, with patience, and with a genuine concern for the feelings of the listener. We choose words that soothe, that comfort, and that uplift. This does not mean we can never speak of difficult truths, but that we learn to do so with a gentle and compassionate heart. The fourth and final aspect is abstaining from idle chatter. This is perhaps the most challenging for us in a world saturated with noise and constant communication. Idle chatter is speech that has no real purpose. It is pointless gossip, aimless speculation, and conversation that simply fills silence with noise. It is speaking just to hear our own voice. This kind of speech dissipates our mental energy and leads to a scattered, unfocused mind. The positive cultivation is purposeful speech. It is valuing our words and valuing silence. It is speaking only when it is timely and beneficial. Purposeful speech is speech that intends to help, to clarify, to share wisdom, or to offer genuine connection and support. Sometimes, the most skillful expression of this principle is what is known as noble silence. The wisdom to recognize when not speaking is the kindest and most helpful action of all. It is in this silence that both we and the other person have the space to truly listen, to reflect, and to connect on a deeper level. In fact, this practice of deep listening is the unspoken fifth element of right speech. True communication is a two-way street. Often, we listen only to form a reply, waiting for a gap in the conversation to insert our own opinion. Deep listening, however, is a meditative act. It is the gift of offering our full, non-judgmental presence to another being. We listen not just to the words, but to the feelings and intentions behind them. We listen to understand, not to win a debate. In doing so, we offer a profound form of healing. To be truly heard is a rare and precious experience, and it is one of the greatest acts of kindness we can perform. There is a timeless story that powerfully illustrates the nature of our words. A man in a village felt jealous of the local sage and began to spread a malicious rumor about him. As the rumor spread, the man saw the damage it was causing and was filled with remorse. He went to the sage to apologize and asked what he could do to make amends. The sage looked at him and said, "There is one thing you must do. Take a feather pillow, go to the highest hill in the village on a very windy day, cut it open, and shake all the feathers out." The man, though confused, did as he was told. He then returned to the sage and said, "I have done it." "Good," replied the sage. "Now, for the second part of your task, go back and collect every single feather and put it back in the pillow." The man was distraught. "But that's impossible," he cried. "The wind has scattered them everywhere. I can never get them all back." The sage nodded slowly. "So it is with your words. Once spoken, they are scattered on the winds of the world. You can never, truly, take them back. Our speech, then, is a profound and creative force. With every sentence, we are either polluting our world with falsehood and discord, or we are purifying it with truth and kindness. We are planting karmic seeds. Right speech is the practice of becoming a conscious communicator, a mindful gardener of our words. It is understanding that the echo that comes back from the valley is determined by the sound we make right now. This realization that our speech is a powerful form of action naturally leads us to consider the other ways we act in the world, through the deeds of our body, and through the work we choose to do to sustain our lives. Having cultivated an awareness of our speech, recognizing each word as a powerful action, we now broaden our lens to encompass the entirety of our conduct in the world. The path of wisdom is not an abstract, intellectual pursuit. It is a way of living that is embodied in every gesture and every choice. We now explore the final two pillars of ethical conduct, or sila, right action and right livelihood. Together with right speech, these practices form a tripod of integrity, a stable foundation upon which the entire structure of our inner peace is built. This is the practice of walking with intention, of ensuring that our physical deeds and our daily work become expressions of our deepest values, rather than contradictions to them. Right action, or samma kammanta, flows from one central compassionate principle, ahimsa, the principle of non-harming. It is the commitment to move through the world in a way that minimizes the damage we cause and, wherever possible, actively contributes to the well-being of others. Traditionally, this is expressed through three fundamental precepts. The first is to abstain from taking life. At its core, this is a vow to cultivate a deep reverence for all living beings. It is to recognize that every creature, from the most magnificent mammal to the smallest insect, shares our own fundamental desire to live and to avoid pain. This practice softens the heart, replacing aggression and indifference with a gentle respect for the intricate web of life of which we are a part. The second precept is to abstain from taking what is not given. On the surface, this is a simple injunction against stealing, but its spirit extends much further. It is a practice of radical honesty and contentment. It is about respecting the property, resources, and boundaries of others. It is about cultivating a mind of generosity, a mind that finds more joy in giving than in taking. When we let go of the grasping mind that is always seeking to acquire more for itself, we discover a profound sense of inner wealth that is not dependent on external possessions. The third precept is to abstain from sexual misconduct. This is a commitment to ensure that our powerful sexual energy is expressed in ways that are rooted in kindness, respect, and honesty, rather than exploitation or craving. It means avoiding any sexual act that causes harm to ourselves or to others, that breaks trust, or that is based on coercion, rather than mutual consent and care. It is about honoring the vulnerability and dignity of both ourselves and our partners, transforming sexuality from a potential source of suffering into a genuine expression of loving connection. These 3 precepts are not restrictive rules intended to diminish our enjoyment of life. They are training guidelines for freedom. They free us from the heavy karmic burdens of guilt, fear, and remorse. By actively choosing to protect life, to practice generosity, and to foster respectful relationships, we create a life of profound integrity, a life where our outer actions are in beautiful harmony with our inner aspirations. This ethical framework then extends into the area where we spend the majority of our waking lives, our work. Right livelihood, or samajiva, is the practice of earning a living in a way that does not cause harm and, ideally, contributes positively to the world. The traditional teachings list specific trades to be avoided: dealing in weapons, in poisons, in intoxicants, or in the trade of living beings for slaughter. These are occupations that directly and obviously create suffering. In our complex, interconnected global economy, navigating this principle can be challenging. It is difficult to find any work that is entirely free from causing some form of harm, however indirect. Therefore, the practice of right livelihood today becomes a more subtle and personal inquiry. The guiding question becomes, does my work, on the whole, support the well-being of society, or does it contribute to its confusion and suffering? But even more importantly, we can practice right livelihood through our conduct within our work, whatever it may be. You may work in an office, a hospital, a factory, or a store. Within that context, are you honest in your dealings? Do you treat your colleagues, customers, and clients with respect and kindness? Do you perform your duties with mindfulness and diligence, or with resentment and carelessness? Do you resist engaging in office gossip or toxic workplace politics? In this way, any form of work can become a profound practice. We can transform our job from being simply a way to make money into a vehicle for cultivating integrity, patience, and compassion. Our work can also be an expression of what has come to be known as engaged Buddhism, the active application of these principles to heal the world's collective suffering. Using our professional skills to address poverty, social injustice, or environmental degradation is a powerful and noble expression of right livelihood. The teachings provide a powerful role model for this in the story of Anathapindika, a wealthy merchant and one of the Buddha's most devoted lay followers. His name, given to him by the people, meant feeder of the poor and destitute. Anathapindika was a master of business, managing his vast enterprises with impeccable honesty and skill, but he did not see his wealth as an end in itself. He viewed it as a resource to be used for the benefit of all. He is most famous for purchasing a beautiful park, known as Jeta's Grove, for the Buddha and the monastic community to use as a place for teachings and retreat. The story says he purchased the land by covering the entire ground with gold coins. He was a man deeply engaged in the worldly affairs of commerce and finance, yet he lived with a heart of boundless generosity and a mind committed to the path of wisdom. His life demonstrates that spiritual practice and worldly success are not necessarily in conflict. It shows us that it is possible to live in the world, to be successful within it, and to do so with an open hand and a compassionate heart, using our resources not for our own aggrandizement, but for the welfare of many. With right speech, right action, and right livelihood, we have now woven the complete tapestry of sila, or ethical conduct. This creates a powerful container of integrity for our lives. When we are not generating turmoil through our words, our deeds, or our work, the outer world becomes far less turbulent. This external peace creates the ideal conditions for our internal practice to flourish. We have built a stable and peaceful home through our conduct. Now, with this secure foundation firmly established, we can turn our full attention back to the direct training of the mind. We can begin the more subtle and powerful work of cultivating the focused, directed, and vibrant energy that is necessary to bring our journey to its ultimate fruition. Having laid the firm and peaceful foundation of ethical conduct in our lives, we return now to the direct training of the mind, but with a new level of skill and intention. It is one thing to passively observe the mind. It is another to actively shape it. The path now invites us to become conscious cultivators of our inner world, to move from being simply a witness of our mental weather to becoming a wise gardener of our own heart. This active, intentional shaping of the mind is accomplished through the next two limbs of the path: right effort and right concentration. These are the practices that take the raw material of our consciousness and transform it into an instrument of profound clarity, stability, and peace. Right effort, or samavayama, is perhaps best understood as a wise and balanced strategy for tending our inner garden. It is a compassionate middle way between aggressive perfectionism and passive resignation. It consists of 4 distinct, yet related, efforts. The first is the effort to prevent unwholesome states from arising. This is the wisdom of preventative care. Through mindfulness, we learn to recognize the very first seeds of negativity, a flicker of irritation before it becomes rage, a pang of envy before it becomes consuming jealousy, a moment of craving before it becomes an obsession. In this early stage, the seed is weak and easily removed. We can apply an immediate antidote. We can bring a thought of loving kindness to meet the irritation. We can reflect on the impermanence of the object of our craving, or we can simply return our attention to the breath. This is like spotting a tiny weed seedling in our garden and plucking it out with ease before it has a chance to grow deep roots. The second is the effort to abandon unwholesome states that have already arisen. Sometimes we are not mindful enough, and a thorny weed of anger or a thick vine of anxiety has already grown and taken hold in our mind. The practice here is not to violently rip it out, which often only strengthens its roots and scatters its seeds, nor is it to pretend it isn't there. Instead, we skillfully work to abandon it. We observe the negative state with mindfulness, seeing its unpleasant, stressful nature without feeding it with more stories. We investigate its causes. We apply the appropriate antidotes with patience and persistence, like gently loosening the soil around a large weed before carefully lifting it out, root and all. We let go of the state by withdrawing our mental investment in it, and it eventually withers from lack of nourishment. The third effort shifts from the negative to the positive. It is the effort to arouse wholesome states that have not yet arisen. This is the joyful, proactive side of the practice. We do not simply wait for feelings of kindness, compassion, generosity, or joy to randomly appear. We actively plant their seeds. We set aside time for metta meditation, intentionally cultivating feelings of goodwill. We perform acts of generosity, We reflect on things we are grateful for. We read inspirational teachings. This is the conscious act of choosing what we want to grow in our garden. We are deciding to plant rows of beautiful flowers that will, in time, fill our inner world with fragrance and color. The fourth and final effort is to maintain and nurture the wholesome states that have already arisen. When a moment of genuine peace, clarity, or joy arises in our meditation or our day, our tendency is often to ignore it or to quickly move on to the next thing. This practice encourages us to do the opposite. We are invited to savor these wholesome states. We notice them, appreciate them, and allow them to fully permeate our being. We investigate the conditions that allowed them to arise, so that we can recreate those conditions in the future. This is like giving water, sunlight, and care to the young, tender sprouts in our garden. By nurturing them, we help them grow strong and resilient, so that eventually our garden is filled with flourishing, beautiful qualities that can withstand the inevitable storms. As we apply this fourfold effort, our mind naturally becomes a cleaner, brighter, and more peaceful place. This creates the perfect condition for the development of right concentration, or sama samadhi. If right effort clears the ground, right concentration is the practice of gathering all the scattered rays of our attention into a single, powerful, and unwavering beam of light. It is the ability to unify the mind, to bring all its wandering energies to rest on a single object of meditation, most commonly the breath. Our mindfulness practice, sati, is the gatekeeper who notices when the mind has wandered away. Right concentration is the ability to have the mind stay put, happily and peacefully, without wandering in the first place. A simple analogy helps to illustrate the relationship between effort and concentration. Imagine you want to boil a pot of water. To do so, you must apply a steady and continuous flame. If you turn the heat on for a minute, then off for 5, then on for 30 seconds, then off for 10 minutes, the water may get lukewarm, but it will never reach the transformative point of boiling. This intermittent, half-hearted application of heat is like the practice of a mind without right effort. We sit for a few minutes, get distracted, give up, and come back later. The mind never gathers enough momentum to find true stability. Right effort is the commitment to apply a steady, continuous flame, and right concentration is the result. The water of the mind reaching the boiling point, a state of powerful, energetic, and joyful unification. This state of deep, absorbed concentration, known in the tradition as jhana, is a profound refuge, a place of immense peace and bliss that is entirely independent of the external world. The fruits of a concentrated mind are twofold. Firstly, it offers a profound sense of peace and restoration. To be able to gather the mind and rest it in a state of unified calm is to find an oasis in the desert of our restless modern lives. It is a deep nourishment for the heart and a true vacation for the nervous system. But this peace, as wonderful as it is not the ultimate goal. The second and more important fruit of concentration is that it transforms the mind into a perfect instrument for insight. A mind that is scattered, agitated, and foggy is like a camera that is out of focus. The pictures it takes of reality will be blurry and distorted. A mind that is concentrated is like a high-powered, perfectly focused lens. It becomes so stable and so clear that it can see the nature of reality with unprecedented precision. It can penetrate the subtle layers of experience and perceive the truths that are normally hidden from our view. It is the stable, unwavering platform from which we can see not just intellectually, but directly, the profound truths of impermanence, not self, and the interconnected nature of all things. Thus, through the patient application of right effort, we have tended our inner garden, cultivating the beautiful and removing the harmful. Through the steady development of right concentration, we have gathered the scattered energies of the mind into a single, bright, and powerful point of awareness. Our mind is no longer a chaotic wilderness. It is a well-ordered, peaceful, and luminous space. It has become a perfect laboratory for the investigation of truth, a powerful telescope, polished and aimed at the stars. With such a refined instrument, we are now prepared to look into the very heart of existence, to perceive a truth so profound, it has the power to unravel all our remaining attachments and fears. We are ready to explore the liberating wisdom of sunyata, the truth of emptiness. Through the dedicated practice of right effort and right concentration, our mind has become like a deep mountain lake on a windless day. The mud of the hindrances has settled, the agitating currents of thought have stilled, and the water has become crystal clear. This profound stillness and clarity allow for an insight so deep that it penetrates the very fabric of reality. We are no longer just looking at the surface reflections. We are now able to see into the nature of the water itself. This seeing is the dawn of the ultimate wisdom, the wisdom of sunyata, or emptiness. This word, perhaps more than any other in the Buddhist lexicon, is prone to misunderstanding. The idea of emptiness can sound cold, nihilistic, or frightening, as if the path leads to a desolate void. But the reality is the precise opposite. The wisdom of emptiness is not a philosophy of nothingness. It is the most positive, radical, and liberating truth, a teaching that dissolves our deepest fears and reveals a universe of profound and miraculous connection. To understand emptiness, let us begin not with abstract philosophy, but with something simple and beautiful, a single flower. We look at the flower, and our mind immediately labels it flower, perceiving it as a single, separate, independent object. But the wisdom of emptiness invites us to look more deeply. What is this flower truly made of? If we look with mindful attention, we can see the sunshine that warmed its petals and fueled its growth. The sunshine is not the flower, but without the sunshine, there is no flower. We can see the rain cloud that provided its water. The cloud is not the flower, but without the cloud, the flower would wither and die. We can see the rich, dark soil that provided its nutrients, and the farmer who tended the soil. The soil and the farmer are not the flower, but without them, the flower could never have been. The flower, then, is entirely composed of non-flower elements. It is empty of any separate, independent, or intrinsic self. Its existence is nothing but a temporary, beautiful coming together of the entire cosmos. To be is to interbe. The flower's being is interwoven with the being of the sun, the cloud, and the earth. This is the meaning of emptiness. It does not mean that the flower does not exist. It means that it does not exist by itself. Now, let us have the courage to apply this same penetrating insight to the self we hold so dear. We feel like a solid, separate, independent I, a distinct entity inside our skin. But let us look more deeply. What is this I made of? The food on our plate this morning, which is a gift from the sun, the earth, and countless living beings. The air we are breathing right now, connecting our lungs to the trees and the sky. The language we think in, the ideas we have, all inherited from our culture, our parents, our teachers. If you take away all these non-self elements, what is left of the self? Just like the flower, the I is completely empty of any separate, independent existence. Our being is a manifestation of the entire universe. The illusion of our separateness is the deepest and most painful delusion of all. The Heart Sutra, one of the most famous Mahayana texts, captures this insight in a short, powerful phrase. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. We can understand this through the analogy of a wave on the ocean. A wave certainly has a form. We can see it. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It has characteristics. It is large or small, gentle or powerful. This is the form aspect. But what is this wave? In its essential nature, it is water. The wave is completely empty of any self that is separate from the water. If you could somehow take all the water out of the wave, there would be no wave left. Its form is just a temporary expression of the water. This is what is meant by form, is emptiness. Now consider the second part. Emptiness is form. This prevents us from falling into the trap of thinking that emptiness is some kind of blank nothingness that exists apart from the world. The emptiness the water is, not found in some abstract realm, separate from the waves. The only way we experience the water of the ocean is as the waves, the ripples, the spray, the currents. The emptiness constantly manifests as form. The water and the wave are not two different things. They are two dimensions of a single reality. The wave is a momentary expression of the water, and the water is the underlying substance of all waves. In precisely the same way, we are not separate entities struggling against the universe. We are temporary waveforms of the universe itself. Our individual life, with its unique shape and duration, is a way that the universe is experiencing and knowing itself. We are not a drop in the ocean. We are the entire ocean in a single drop. To truly feel this in our bones is to be liberated from the deepest source of our anxiety. The separate self, the ego, is a small and terrified thing. It lives in constant fear of its own dissolution. It builds walls of defense. It puffs itself up with pride. It shrinks in the shadow of comparison. And it is terrified of its own inevitable death. But when we see that this separate self is an illusion, the walls come down. There is no one to defend. There is no solid thing to be threatened. We can relax into the great, flowing river of life because we see that we are the river. This insight dissolves the rigid, dualistic thinking that chops the world into pieces. Me versus you. Subject versus object. Friend versus enemy. Success versus failure. These are just labels we apply to the seamless, interconnected dance of reality. And from this profound seeing of our interconnectedness, or interbeing, the quality of compassion, or karuna, arises naturally and effortlessly. When the illusion of the separate self dissolves, we see that the suffering of another is not truly separate from our own. Their pain is a wave in the same ocean of which we are a part. To wish to alleviate their suffering is as natural as one hand reaching to soothe the other when it is hurt. Compassion is no longer a moralistic duty to be practiced. It is the logical, spontaneous, loving response of a heart that has understood the truth of our shared existence. We act to help others, not because we should, but because we recognize that the other is not other. This wisdom of emptiness is the ultimate flowering of the path. It is the final solvent that dissolves the remaining knots of fear, alienation, and attachment in the heart. To see the world in this way not as a collection of separate, competing objects, but as a single, miraculous, and interdependent wholes. To see with the eyes of awakening, it is to find a peace that cannot be shaken, a love that has no borders, and a freedom that is as vast as space itself. And who better to embody this incredible journey from the pain of the isolated self to the freedom of universal connection than the human being who first charted this course. To deepen our inspiration and our faith in the path, it is now time to turn our gaze to the story of his life, not as a distant god, but as a man who walked this very path to its ultimate destination, becoming a beacon for all humanity. Having explored the profound wisdom of emptiness, the understanding that we are all interconnected waves in a single ocean of being, our journey now turns to the ultimate embodiment of this path. This liberating insight was not delivered from on high by a deity, nor was it a chance philosophical discovery. It was the culmination of a deep, personal, and profoundly human quest undertaken by a man named Siddhartha Gautama some 2,500 years ago. To hear his story is not to worship a remote god. It is to draw inspiration from a fellow human being who walked the path to its very end, and in doing so, became a guide for all who wish to follow. His journey is the archetypal story of awakening, a map of the soul's passage from the darkness of confusion to the brilliant light of wisdom. His story is our story. He was born a prince in a small kingdom at the foot of the Himalayas. His father, the king, determined to shield his son from any hint of life's unpleasantness, constructed a gilded cage of pleasure around him. Siddhartha grew up in magnificent palaces, surrounded by every conceivable luxury. The music was always beautiful, the food was always exquisite, the company was always young and healthy. Any sign of sickness, old age, or decay was immediately hidden from his view. The king hoped that by protecting him from suffering, Siddhartha would grow up to be a great and powerful emperor, not a spiritual seeker. Yet, even in this perfect world, Siddhartha felt a subtle, gnawing disquiet, a sense of meaninglessness, a quiet, existential ache haunted him. He possessed everything the world could offer, yet a deep intuition told him that this fragile, pleasure-soaked reality could not be the whole truth of the human condition. Driven by this inner questioning, he persuaded his charioteer to take him on several journeys beyond the palace walls. And it was here that the carefully constructed illusion of his life was shattered. On his first trip, he saw for the first time an old man, his body frail, bent, and wrinkled. The prince was shocked to his core, and his charioteer explained that aging is the inescapable fate of all living beings. On his second trip, he saw a sick person, their body racked with disease and pain. He learned of the body's fragility and its vulnerability to illness. On his third trip, he encountered a funeral procession and saw a corpse being carried for cremation. He was confronted with the stark, unavoidable reality of death. These three sights: old age, sickness, and death pierced his heart. He realized that his own life of pleasure was a lie, a temporary distraction from the universal truths of decay and mortality that awaited him and everyone he loved. Despair began to consume him. But on a fourth trip, he saw something that changed everything. Amidst the suffering of the world, he saw a wandering ascetic, a holy man with a shaven head and a simple robe, who walked with a serene and dignified calm. This man possessed nothing, yet he radiated a profound peace that the prince, with all his wealth, had never known. In that moment, a seed of hope was planted in Siddhartha's heart. He realized that if this man could find peace in the midst of so much suffering, then a path out of suffering must exist. This realization set his life on a new course. He could no longer live in the palace, pretending that all was well. Driven by an overwhelming compassion for all beings trapped in this cycle of aging, sickness, and death, he made the great renunciation. He secretly left his home, his royal status, his wife, and his newborn son, and walked out into the world with nothing to begin his search for the deathless. For the next 6 years, Siddhartha threw himself into the most extreme spiritual practices of his day, believing that he could conquer suffering by punishing his body. He became a master of asceticism. He learned to hold his breath until he felt his skull would crack. He endured extreme heat and cold. He slept on beds of thorns, and he practiced extreme fasting, starving himself until his ribs protruded. His skin clung to his bones, and he could feel his spine by touching his stomach. He pushed the limits of human endurance, gaining a reputation for his incredible willpower. Yet, at the end of these 6 years, he was no closer to the truth. His body was wrecked, his mind was weak and clouded, and the fundamental question of suffering remained unanswered. He realized then that he had simply traded one extreme for another. The path of self-indulgence in the palace had not led to freedom, and the path of self-mortification in the forest had also failed. The true path, he understood, must lie somewhere in between. It must be a middle way. Rejecting asceticism, he accepted a simple meal of rice and milk from a village girl, regaining his strength. He then walked to a large pipal tree, which would later be known as the Bodhi tree, the tree of awakening. He sat down at its base, facing east, and made an unbreakable vow. Though my skin and bones may wither, though my flesh and blood may dry up, I will not rise from this spot until I have found the supreme and final awakening. As he sat in deep meditation, the final battle for his mind began. This battle is personified in the figure of Mara, a demon king who represents the entirety of worldly temptation and fear. Mara is not an external devil. He is the embodiment of Siddhartha's own deepest conditioning. He sent armies of fear and doubt to assail Siddhartha. He paraded his beautiful daughters, personifying sensual desire, to seduce him. He challenged Siddhartha's right to seek enlightenment, questioning his worthiness. But Siddhartha remained unmoved. He met fear not with aggression, but with steadfast calm. He met desire not with suppression, but with mindful observation. And when asked who would bear witness to his merit, he did not point to gods or to his royal lineage. He simply reached down and touched the ground, and the earth itself was his witness. Having conquered the forces of his own mind, his consciousness became perfectly still, clear, and bright. As the night deepened, profound insights arose. He saw into the vast expanse of his previous lives. He saw with perfect clarity the universal law of karma, how beings are reborn according to their actions. And he saw the Four Noble Truths, the complete diagnosis and cure for the human condition. Then, as the first light of dawn broke the darkness, he looked up and saw the morning star hanging in the sky. In that moment of pure, silent seeing, the last, most subtle veil of ignorance fell away from his mind. He was no longer a seeker, he was awake. At the age of 35, Siddhartha Gautama had become the Buddha, the awakened one. His journey is the ultimate testament to human potential. He was not a god, nor a prophet sent from a divine realm. He was a human being who, through his own courageous effort, profound patience, and penetrating wisdom, purified his own mind and saw reality for what it is. His awakening proves that the path is real, the destination is attainable, and the freedom he found is available to every one of us. And one of the most practical and immediate fruits of his awakening was a new way of understanding our relationship to pain itself, a simple yet revolutionary insight that can free us from the vast majority of our mental anguish. This insight is perfectly captured in the powerful parable of the second arrow. The Buddha's awakening under the Bodhi tree was not an escape from the human condition. It was a complete and radical immersion into its true nature. He did not ascend to a heavenly realm free from difficulty, but instead gained the profound wisdom to meet the inevitable challenges of life with an unshakable peace. One of the most practical and immediate fruits of his enlightenment is a teaching that holds the key to ending the vast majority of our daily mental anguish. It is a simple, powerful parable that distinguishes between the pain that life inevitably brings and the suffering that we needlessly create for ourselves. This is the wisdom of the second arrow. The Buddha said that when an ordinary person, untaught in the ways of wisdom, is struck by a painful physical or emotional arrow, they feel the sting, but immediately after, they react with aversion, with fear, with self-pity, and with mental proliferation. It is, he said, as if they have been shot by one arrow, and then, in their confusion and distress, they foolishly shoot themselves with a second one. And so they experience two pains, two wounds, the first from the initial event, and the second, often more agonizing one, from their own reaction. In contrast, when a wise disciple, one well instructed in the path, is struck by that same first arrow, they too feel the sting. They do not deny the pain, but that is all they feel. They do not launch the second arrow of mental anguish, and so they experience only one wound, not two. In this simple distinction lies the secret to profound resilience and inner freedom. Let us deconstruct this teaching to see its immediate relevance to our own lives. The first arrow is the unavoidable, objective pain of existence. It is the raw, unmediated data of life. It is the headache you wake up with, the car that breaks down in traffic, the unexpected bill in the mail. It is the sharp pang of disappointment when a project fails, the sting of a critical comment from a colleague, the ache of loneliness, the deep sorrow of losing someone you love. These are the givens of human life. No amount of meditation, prayer, or positive thinking will create a life that is completely free from first arrows. The path of wisdom is not a magical shield that deflects them. It is a path of learning how to skillfully care for the wound so that we do not make it worse. The second arrow is the suffering we create about the pain. It is our mental reaction, our commentary, our story. The first arrow is the physical sensation of the headache. The second arrow is the stream of thoughts. This is awful. My whole day is ruined. I will never get my work done. Why does this always happen to me? I can't stand this feeling. The first arrow is the critical comment from your boss. The second arrow is the subsequent spiral of shame, anxiety, and anger. I'm such a failure. They must think I'm an idiot. I'm probably going to get fired. I should have said something back. I'll be rehearsing what I should have said all night. The pain of the first arrow is real, but it is often clean and temporary. The suffering generated by the second arrow is sticky, complex, and can last for hours, days, or even a lifetime. We take a single event and, with our own minds, we spin it into a thick, tangled narrative of personal failure and despair. This second arrow is the true source of our dukkha. And the most important thing to realize about it is that it is optional. We are the ones who fire it. So, how do we learn to put down the bow? The key lies in the space that mindfulness creates. Normally, the first arrow strikes, and our reaction is so instantaneous that it feels like a single event. There is no space, no pause. But through the practice of mindfulness, we develop the ability to slow this process down. We learn to create a sacred pause between the stimulus and our response. And in that pause lies our power and our freedom. Here is how to practice this in the midst of your life. The next time you are struck by a first arrower, painful emotion like fear, a difficult interaction, a piece of bad news, The first step is to recognize it. Acknowledge, this is a first arrow moment. This hurts. Instead of immediately launching into your habitual mental story, make a conscious choice to do something different. Turn your attention inward, into your body. Where do you feel the impact of this arrow? Is it a tight knot in your stomach? A hollow feeling in your chest? A burning heat in your face? A clamping in your jaw? Find the primary physical location of the sensation. This raw physical feeling is the first arrow. Your task is not to analyze it, to judge it, or to push it away. Your only task is to observe it with a kind and curious attention. Be a scientist of your own inner experience. What are its qualities? Is it sharp or dull? Is it vibrating, pulsing, or solid? Does it have a clear boundary, or is it diffuse? Does it change when you watch it? As you do this, the mind will desperately try to pull you back into the story, back into firing the second arrow. It will offer you thoughts of blame, of self-pity, of worry. The practice is to notice these thoughts as separate mental events, like clouds passing in the sky, and to gently but firmly keep returning your attention to the raw physical data in the body. Stay with the sensation. Breathe into it. Soften around its edges. You are allowing the raw energy of the painful experience to move through you and to dissipate naturally, without giving it the fuel of your mental stories to keep it burning. You learn to bear the clean pain of the first arrow, and in doing so, you spare yourself the far greater, self-inflicted pain of the second. This teaching is a profound gift of agency. It tells us that we are not helpless victims of our emotions. While we cannot control the world and prevent all first arrows from coming our way, we have an immense capacity to influence our inner experience of those events. We can, with practice, learn to stop shooting ourselves. Each time we refrain from firing that second arrow, we build our resilience, our self-compassion, and our inner strength. We become a safe harbor for our own hearts. This practice of skillfully meeting pain transforms not only our relationship with the unpleasant aspects of life, but with the pleasant ones as well. When we are less terrified of the inevitable pain of loss, we become less desperate in our clinging to moments of pleasure. We can hold our experiences, both good and bad, with a lighter, more open hand. We can learn to savor the sweetness of life without becoming addicted to it, and to bear its bitterness without being poisoned by it. This ability to engage with the world fully, without frantic grasping or fearful resistance, is the very essence of non-attachment, a key that unlocks the door to a profound and unshakable freedom. Having learned to meet the inevitable pains of life without the needless amplification of the second arrow, we cultivate a deep resilience. We are no longer so terrified of life's stings. This newfound courage allows us to look at the other side of the coin, our relationship with pleasure, with success, and with all the things we love and cherish. Just as we add suffering to pain through our reactions, we often add anxiety and fear to our joy through our clinging. The path of wisdom offers a solution to this as well, a practice that allows us to love the world more deeply and fearlessly than ever before. This is the art of non-attachment, or nekama. To a mind conditioned by grasping, this concept can sound like a recipe for a cold, grey, and joyless life. But this is a profound misunderstanding. Non-attachment is not indifference. It is not a refusal to love or a denial of beauty. It is the secret to engaging with life fully, without the poison of fear and the exhaustion of clinging. It is the art of holding everything with an open hand. To grasp this art, we must first understand the crucial distinction between preference and clinging. It is entirely natural to have preferences, We prefer health to sickness, kindness to cruelty, peace to conflict. We enjoy the taste of good food, the beauty of a sunset, the warmth of a loving friendship. The path does not ask us to become passionless robots, indifferent to all experience. The problem does not lie in the enjoying. It lies in the clinging that so often follows. Clinging, or upadana in Pali, is the mental act of turning a simple preference into a desperate, non-negotiable demand. It is the voice in the mind that says, "I must have this to be happy," or, "After getting it, this must not change. I cannot bear to lose it." It is the clenching of the fist around our experience. A preference says, "A sunny day would be lovely." Clinging says, "If it rains, my day is ruined, and I will be miserable." A preference enjoys the company of a loved one. Clinging manifests as jealousy, possessiveness, and the constant anxious fear of them leaving. It is this clenching, this fear-based demand that reality conform to our will, that is the source of our suffering, not the simple enjoyment of life's pleasures. Imagine going through life with your fists constantly clenched, trying to hold on to everything you value. It is an exhausting way to live. The muscles are always tense. You are always on guard, fearful of losing what little you have managed to grasp, and you are unable to receive anything new because your hands are already full and closed. This is the life of attachment. Now, imagine the alternative: to go through life with an open hand. When something beautiful is placed in your hand, a loving relationship, a moment of success, a cherished possession, you can feel it, appreciate it, and cherish its presence fully. You hold it gently, without crushing it, and if the winds of impermanence blow and it leaves your hand, you let it go. Your hand remains open. There is no violent tearing, no desperate struggle, just a graceful release. And because your hand is open, it is always ready to receive the next gift life has to offer. This is not indifference. It is a profound and fearless trust in the flow of life. It is the ability to love without needing to possess. This practice of holding with an open hand can be applied to every aspect of our lives. We can apply it to our material possessions, enjoying the comfort and utility they provide without letting our sense of self-worth become entangled with them. We are grateful for what we have, but we know that we are not our possessions. We can apply it to our relationships, loving people freely and wholeheartedly, celebrating who they are rather than trying to shape them into who we want them to be. We give them the freedom to be themselves, and in doing so, we find a more authentic and peaceful connection. We can even apply this to our own views and opinions. We can hold our beliefs with conviction, but also with an open hand, ready to listen to other perspectives and to change our minds in the face of new evidence. We release the rigid need to always be right, and most profoundly, we apply it to our own identity, letting go of our attachment to a fixed image of who we are. We allow ourselves to be a process, a flowing river, rather than a static statue we must constantly polish and defend. The Buddha told a famous parable that perfectly illustrates the wisdom of non-attachment, even to the most precious things. He described a person standing on the bank of a vast and dangerous river, wanting to get to the safe shore on the other side. The near shore represents our ordinary life of suffering, and the far shore represents liberation or nirvana. There is no bridge or boat. So, with great effort, the person gathers grass, twigs, branches, and vines, and skillfully builds a raft. Relying on the raft, paddling with their hands and feet, they make the arduous journey and arrive safely on the far shore. Now, the Buddha asked, "What should this person do with the raft?" Having arrived at their destination, should they think, "This raft has been so helpful to me. I will not abandon it. I will hoist it onto my head and carry it with me as I continue my journey on land?" The monks agreed that this would be a foolish and burdensome thing to do. The wise person, the Buddha explained, would think, "This raft was essential for my journey across the water, but now that I am on dry land, I can leave it behind and continue my journey unburdened." Then the Buddha delivered the stunning conclusion. "In the same way," he said, "my teachings, the Dharma, are like a raft. They are for the purpose of crossing over, not for the purpose of holding on to. This is the ultimate instruction in non-attachment. Even the most profound truths, the most helpful spiritual practices, are ultimately tools. They are means to an end. We must resist the subtle temptation to turn the path itself into another object of clinging, another source of identity and pride. When we truly learn to hold our lives with this open-handed grace, an immense burden is lifted. The constant, exhausting work of grasping, defending, and fearing loss is replaced by a sense of lightness, spaciousness, and freedom. The heart, no longer preoccupied with its own private project of acquisition and self-preservation, becomes available to the world in a new way. It is more sensitive, more present, more open, and a heart that is this open, freed from the claustrophobic prison of its own clinging, naturally and spontaneously turns its attention outward. It begins to perceive the suffering of other beings with a new clarity and intimacy. And the only possible response of a heart so open and so free is the deep, unwavering wish to help, to serve, and to relieve that suffering. This is the birth of true compassion, the active and engaged expression of a liberated heart. When the heart is finally unburdened from the exhausting labor of clinging, a profound quietness descends. In this quiet, for the first time, we are able to truly perceive the world, both within and without. And the truth we perceive, the truth that the first noble truth pointed to at the very beginning of our journey, is that life is saturated with suffering. We see the quiet desperation behind a colleague's smile, the fear in the eyes of an angry driver, the loneliness of the elderly, and the vast, systemic suffering of poverty and injustice. We see our own moments of pain not as personal failures, but as part of this universal condition. The natural, unavoidable, and spontaneous response of a heart that truly sees this is karuna, the Sanskrit word for compassion. If loving kindness, or metta, is the wish for all beings to be happy, then compassion is the wish for all beings to be free from suffering. It is the trembling of the heart in the face of pain and the deep, unshakable resolve to do something about it. It is the active and engaged expression of wisdom. It is essential to distinguish true compassion from its near enemy, pity. Pity looks down from a distance. It creates a wall between the observer and the sufferer. It says, "Oh, you poor thing, I am so glad I am not in your position." Pity reinforces the ego, making us feel separate and superior. Compassion, on the other hand, dismantles the wall. It is the courage to feel with another being. It arises from the recognition of our shared humanity, our shared vulnerability. It says, "I know the nature of suffering because I feel it too. Your pain is not foreign to me." It is a resonance, a connection that is rooted in empathy and equality. However, this heartfelt connection must be guided by wisdom. Unwise compassion, sometimes called idiot compassion, is the well-intentioned desire to help that ends up causing more harm. It is giving money to an addict, enabling their self-destruction. It is doing everything for our children, crippling their ability to develop their own strength. True compassion is clear-seeing. It is patient. It acts not just to alleviate the immediate symptom, but to address the root cause of suffering, even when that course of action is more difficult or less immediately gratifying. Compassion without wisdom can be messy. Wisdom without compassion can be cold and sterile. On this path, they are like two wings of a great bird. They must work together for flight to be possible. The tradition offers powerful practices for actively cultivating the heart of compassion, for strengthening this spiritual muscle. One of the most profound is a Tibetan practice called Tonglen, which means giving and taking. This practice is radical because it directly reverses our habitual tendency to grasp at pleasure and push away pain. It is a form of spiritual alchemy in which we learn to use our own heart as a vessel to transform suffering into healing. To practice Tonglen, we begin by resting our minds and generating a feeling of warmth and loving kindness for ourselves. We must start from a place of strength and self-care. Then, we begin the visualization. On the in-breath, we consciously breathe in the pain and suffering of another person. We can start with someone we care about, who is hurting. We visualize their suffering, their physical pain, their fear, their grief as a dark, heavy, smoky cloud. With courage and love, we breathe this smoky cloud directly into the center of our own heart. We do not hold it there. In our heart, it is instantly purified and transformed. Then, on the out-breath, we breathe out everything that is bright, peaceful, and healing within us. We breathe out our own well-being, our peace of mind, our strength, our joy. We visualize this as a luminous, white, healing light that we send from our heart to the other person, imagining it surrounding them, soothing their pain, and bringing them whatever relief they need. We synchronize this with our breathing in the dark smoke of suffering, breathing out the clear light of peace. This practice can feel daunting. Why would we intentionally breathe in pain? It works because it is a direct assault on the self-clinging ego. It breaks down our deep-seated aversion to discomfort. It builds our courage and our capacity to be present with suffering, and it dissolves the illusion of separation. By taking in another's pain and offering them our peace, we are living the truth that their well-being is inseparable from our own. We can start this practice with our own suffering breathing, in our own anxiety, and breathing out a sense of calm to ourselves. We can then extend it to those we love, and eventually, even to those we find difficult, and ultimately, to all beings everywhere. Tonglen is a powerful, transformative practice that turns the poison of suffering into the medicine of compassion. This ideal of boundless, active compassion is embodied in the archetypal figure of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion. A Bodhisattva is a being who, on the verge of final enlightenment, makes a vow to postpone their own entry into nirvana in order to remain in the world and help all other beings find liberation first. The very name Avalokiteshvara means the one who perceives the cries of the world. Legend says that as he looked upon the suffering of the world, his heart broke with such immense compassion that his head shattered into 11 pieces, so he could better hear the cries from all directions, and his 2 arms shattered into 1,000 arms, so he could better reach out and help. This image of the 1,000-armed, 1,000-eyed Bodhisattva is a powerful symbol. It represents the potential that lies within each of us. The 1,000 eyes are our own capacity to see suffering clearly without turning away. And the 1,000 arms are our own 2 hands, and the countless skillful ways we can use them to offer comfort, support, and aid to those around us. To practice compassion is to awaken the Avalokiteshvara within our own heart. We have now traveled from the foundation of ethical living, through the deep training of the mind in concentration, to the pinnacle of wisdom that sees our interconnectedness, and have arrived here at compassion, the heart's response to that wisdom. The journey has been vast, covering the core principles and practices of this transformative path. We have been given the diagnosis, the prognosis, and the complete treatment plan for our deepest spiritual ailments. We have the map, we have the tools, we have the inspiration. The final question that remains is no longer what or why, but how. How do we weave all of this mindfulness, wisdom, non-attachment, compassion into the simple, messy, beautiful fabric of our ordinary, everyday lives? How do we make every moment, every cup of tea, every footstep, an expression of this awakened mind? For this final integration, we turn to the earthy, direct, and profoundly simple spirit of Zen. Our long journey has taken us through the deepest valleys and to the highest peaks of the mind. We have navigated the complex maps of causality and consciousness, and we have opened our hearts to the boundless truths of our interconnectedness. And now, at the end of this profound exploration, the path brings us to the most surprising and radical place of all, right back to where we started. It brings us to the simple, unadorned, and sacred reality of this very moment. The tradition that most powerfully and directly embodies this art of integration, of living the awakening in each breath, is Zen. Zen teaches that enlightenment is not a distant goal to be achieved in the future. It is the immediate reality of our lives, waiting to be discovered in the most ordinary of acts. The ultimate truth is not to be found in a scripture or a complex philosophy. It is to be found in the taste of your tea. The gateway to the Zen way of living is the cultivation of what is known as beginner's mind. The mind of an expert is often a closed mind. It is full of facts, opinions, and past experiences. It thinks it already knows, and so it is no longer capable of truly seeing what is right in front of it. The beginner's mind, however, is open, spacious, and full of wonder. It is the mind of a child seeing a caterpillar for the very first time, utterly captivated and free from any preconceived notions. To cultivate a beginner's mind is to let go of our tired labels and assumptions, and to meet each moment as if it were the first and only moment in existence. There is a classic Zen story that illustrates this perfectly. A learned university professor, an expert in philosophy and religion, came to visit a wise old Zen master to inquire about Zen. As the master served tea, the professor began to talk, endlessly showing off his own vast knowledge. The master listened patiently as he filled the professor's cup. Then, when the cup was full, he kept pouring, letting the hot tea spill over the sides and onto the table. The professor, shocked, yelled, "Stop! The cup is full. No more will go in." The Zen master stopped pouring and looked at him calmly. "Like this cup," he said, "you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" This is the challenge of the beginner's mind. It is the willingness to become empty, to let go of what we think we know, so that we can have a direct, unmediated experience of life itself. This direct seeing gives rise to a unique aesthetic, a different way of appreciating beauty, known in the Japanese tradition as wabi-sabi. In a world that is obsessed with flawless perfection, polished surfaces, and eternal youth, wabi-sabi is the discovery of profound beauty in things that are imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete. It is the beauty of a handmade ceramic bowl that is slightly asymmetrical. It is the grace of a moss-covered stone wall, or the poignant beauty of a single, withered, autumn leaf. It finds value not in concealing the marks of time, but in honoring them. This is not just a principle of art, it is a way of life. It is learning to find beauty in our own imperfections, in our own aging bodies, in the so-called flaws of our character. It is a deep, compassionate acceptance of life as it is, rather than a constant, stressful striving for an unattainable ideal of perfection. It is the wisdom of impermanence, transformed into an experience of beauty. The core instruction of Zen, the way to bring this all into practice, is breathtakingly simple. When you do something, do it with your whole being. A famous Zen saying goes, "When walking, just walk. When sitting, just sit. Above all, don't wobble." Another is simply, chop wood, carry water. The key is to bring the same quality of total, undivided attention that we cultivate in formal meditation to every single activity of our lives. When you are washing the dishes, the universe is nothing but the warmth of the water, the feeling of the soap, the sound of the plate being rinsed. You are not also planning your tomorrow or ruminating on your yesterday. You are fully present with the act of washing. In this way, the most mundane chores are transformed into sacred rituals. Enlightenment is not waiting for you on a mountaintop or in a special state of mystical trance. It is waiting for you at the bottom of your laundry basket, in the act of sweeping the floor, in the kindness you show to a stranger. There is no separation between the spiritual and the ordinary. There is only this moment and the quality of attention we bring to it. To support this way of life, Zen emphasizes a radical simplicity. This means clearing away the non-essential, both externally and internally. Externally, it is the practice of letting go of the clutter of possessions that we do not need, recognizing that a cluttered home often reflects and contributes to a cluttered mind. It is not about embracing poverty, but about discovering the richness of having enough. Internally, this simplicity means letting go of the mental clutter we carry, the old resentments, the useless worries, the complex theories, and the rigid opinions that weigh us down. By simplifying our lives in this way, we create space, we create silence, we create an inner and outer environment where clarity can arise, where we can discern what is truly important. And so, we arrive at the end of our exploration. We have seen that the grand, sweeping journey of the Buddhist path through ethics, through the depths of the mind, through the profound wisdom of reality's nature, and through the boundless heart of compassion, ultimately leads us back to the ground beneath our feet. The entire, intricate map, once fully explored, reveals a simple treasure that was here all along: the sacredness of the present moment. The path does not lead us away from our lives in a flight of spiritual escapism. It leads us directly back into the heart of our lives, but with new eyes that can see the miracle in the mundane, and an open heart that can meet every experience with courage, wisdom, and love. The journey is complete, yet it is also just beginning. It is now time to gather the threads of all that we have learned, and to see the beautiful, coherent tapestry they weave. Our journey began in the quiet darkness of a sleepless night, with the gentle, persistent sound of rain mirroring the restless patter of an anxious mind. We began as a person lost in the storm of modern life, feeling overwhelmed by the relentless downpour of stress, expectation, and a quiet sense of dissatisfaction. Together, we have walked a long and ancient path in search of shelter. We learned to name that inner rain, to see it not as a personal failing, but as the universal truth of dukkha. We looked to the sky and found the source of the storm in our own clinging and thirst, our tanha. Then, like a break in the clouds, we saw the breathtaking promise of a clear and peaceful sky, the possibility of nirodha, the end of suffering. We were given a map for that journey, the Noble Eightfold Path. Following it, we learned to anchor ourselves in the storm with the simple rhythm of our breath. We found the courage to watch the great, flowing river of impermanence, and we peered into its waters to find that the solid self we sought to protect was as fluid and selfless as the river itself. This insight opened our hearts, allowing us to cultivate a boundless, unconditional kindness for ourselves and for all beings, and to meet the tears of the world with true compassion. Finally, this grand path led us back to the profound simplicity of a single moment, teaching us that the entire journey is contained in the mindful act of washing a bowl or tasting a cup of tea. And so we arrive at the essential message of this entire journey. The profound peace we seek is not found in a future destination, a different life, or a world free from problems. It cannot be bought or achieved. It was never outside of us to begin with. The peace we seek is a quality of being, an inner refuge that is available in every moment, regardless of the weather outside. The true, deep, mindful sleep we crave is not merely the rest of the body, but the deep, abiding rest of a mind that is no longer at war with reality. It is the peace that comes from unclenching the fist of our desires and holding our life with an open hand. It is the quiet that descends when we stop shooting the second arrow. You do not need to become someone else to find this peace. You do not need to retreat from the world. You have all the tools you need already. They are your own breath, your own awareness, your own innate capacity for kindness. The journey does not require a grand gesture, only a gentle, persistent turning of the mind, moment by moment. The path to awakening is paved with single, conscious breaths. So now, as our time together comes to a close, let the journey continue. Listen. Listen to the gentle rain falling outside your window. But this time, hear it differently. Let it not be the sound of your anxiety, but the sound of your meditation. Let each drop be a reminder of the quiet, spacious, and peaceful heart that is your truest nature. Let it be the lullaby that guides you, finally, to a place of profound and gentle rest.